CINEA has become CINEA, the European Climate, Infrastructure and Environment Executive Agency established by the European Commission. With a budget of around 56 billion euros for 2021-2027, CINEA supports the European Green Deal by implementing EU programs that contribute to Europe's transition to climate neutrality by 2050. The agency supports vital transport and energy infrastructure actions under the Connecting Europe Facility Programme, and under the Horizon Europe programme also implements research and innovation projects aimed at fostering climate action, improving the competitiveness of the energy and transport sectors, as well as the quality of the services they bring to society. CINEA also manages the implementation of the Innovation Fund, one of the world's largest funding programs for commercial demonstration of innovative low-carbon technologies. The agency also implements the Renewable Energy Financing Mechanism. This helps member states in reaching the renewable energy targets, and the Public Sector Loan Facility pillar of the Just Transition Mechanism, which supports the regions most affected by the transition towards climate neutrality. CINEA also advances environmental, nature conservation, climate action and clean energy projects as it takes over the implementation of the LIFE programme. It is also in charge of the European Maritime, Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund, which supports the Common Fisheries Policy, the Union's Maritime Policy, and the EU's agenda for international ocean governance. With its focus on climate, the environment, modern infrastructure and networks, CINEA is the EU's focal point for green projects in Europe.
We have Herald Ruijters from DG Move who will give in the program. We will have two panel sessions on how CEF contributes to railways. And then we have some closing remarks where I have to say, unfortunately, that one of the three speakers, Mrs. Deparnay-Grunenberg, who MAP, unfortunately, she cannot be with us today because of sickness. But so we'll have two concluding remarks by Monika Heiming and by Henrik Hololei. So, but before that, I propose that I will start with my introduction a bit to say a bit what CEF has been doing so far. So if you can maybe go to the first slide, please. No. So as I said, I'll guide you through a bit to what CEF1 has been doing. If my colleagues get the slides on, so that will be a matter of seconds, I hope, so that we can start. But anyway, I can already talk about the first slide, which is anyway to show you a bit, as you will see in a second, the different programs that we're managing. But I'm not going to go in detail because I guess all of you have been following the introductory film, which has already been explaining a bit what we're doing and what the different programs stand for. So, but you will have seen that apart from the legacy programs that we're managing on CEF and on Horizon 2020, we'll be managing quite some more activities now, quite a lot of programs that are linked to the development of the Green Deal have been concentrated in our agency. So as you can see here, so we have quite some programs. As I said, I'm not going to repeat them in detail because they were all explained in the film, but you see that our portfolio has been expanded quite solidly with quite some more programs, and some as well that we've taken over from another agency, the LIFE program and then the Maritime Fund. So I think we can move to the next slide. So it's important, of course, that for the greening of the transport sector, as you know, this cannot be achieved without further supporting the development of the rail network. And why? Because as you can see, the rail is already largely electrified and emits much less CO2 than equivalent travel by road or air. I mean, as you can see, it accounts only for 0.4% of the emissions in the transport sector, while all transport accounts for 25% of the total EU emissions. And furthermore, it's the only transport means that has consistently reduced the emissions and energy consumption. Then on the next slide, you will see that rail is more attractive than other transport modes when you consider the number of accidents, so it's really quite limited. But nevertheless, we should say that rail is still largely underexploited, as EU rail covers for only 7.8% of the passenger transport and 18.7% of the freight transport. So it's clearly a target for CEF2 that we try to increase this percentage by several things that we envisage, like the construction and upgrade of railway infrastructure, giving priority, of course, to the further development of the European transport network, focusing on missing links and cross-border projects, to increase the interoperability with full deployment of ERTMS, and then, of course, as well support capacity increase in urban nodes. So that's things that we really would like to highlight in particular within CEF2. Next slide, please. So this is just an overview of what we did in CEF1, and as you can see, over the period 2014 to 2020, we have been supporting more than 1,000 actions for a total contribution of 23.3 billion, and which led to a total investment, or which will lead at the end to a total investment of more than 50 billion. Next slide, please. And I think this slide is even more interesting for the rail sector, in the sense that you can see that we are financing around 450 projects, in particular in the rail sector, and for 16.5 billion, which is more than 70% of the allocation that we have done in CEF1. Next slide, please. So the 450 rail projects I was just talking about, they cover all member states, of course, those who have a rail network along the 9 core network corridors, and they address as well both conventional as high-speed lines, as well as rolling stock, railroad terminals, and ERTMS. Now you can see on the slide quite some interesting and important outputs. I'm not going to read them all in detail, but you can see there's quite some impressive figures on the number of kilometers of electrification of freight lines that have been adapted and on ERTMS, and then quite some wagons that have been equipped with silent brakes. So this is a bit, first a general overview, then maybe just to mention that we have, just to give a few examples, because okay, I can say there's so many projects, but it's good to mention a few projects that we've been managing together with DG Move. And so in CEF1, for instance, we have, as you know, 4 railway flagships that will change forever, I would say, the railway sector in Europe. And these are, and I will quickly go through them. We have the Brenner Base Tunnel, Lyon-Turin, Fehmarn Belt, and then Rail Baltica. But I'll say a few words on each of them. So next slide, please, will be on the Brenner. So the Brenner Base Tunnel, it's a 55-kilometer long tunnel which will stretch between Austria and Italy. And of course, it will remove such a major cross-border bottleneck in an environmentally friendly, sensitive area. It's constructed for both rail and freight transport, for both passenger and freight transport across the Alps. And of course, this will lead to a shift, an important shift from road to rail. Then Lyon-Turin. It's a 57.5-kilometer tunnel between France and Italy, which is constructed as a flat railway line under the Alps. When it will be fully constructed, it will decrease freight operating costs by 40%, and the traveling time from Turin to Lyon will be halved. Then the Fehmarn Belt Tunnel, which is a fixed rail link across the Fehmarn Belt between Germany and Denmark. It's an 18-kilometer tunnel between Puttgarden and Rolbehan in Denmark for both passengers and freight transport. Now, passengers train will profit from a future line speed of 200 kilometers, which will lead to a reduction of almost half of the traveling time between Copenhagen and Hamburg, going from 4 hours and a half to 2 hours and a half, and it will avoid as well a detour of 160 kilometers. Then last but definitely not least, we have Rail Baltica, where this project concerns studies and works for the construction of a new conventional double-track and fast anti-ERTMS equipped European gauge railway line connecting the Baltic countries to Poland. And today we'll have the pleasure to have Mrs. Popovic, who is the director of the EU Fund Department at PKP PLK, the Polish Railway Infrastructure Manager, and she will give us an overview of the ongoing works on the Polish section of Rail Baltica. But of course, apart from these four very important railway projects, we have much more successful stories and a lot of interventions that should lead to solve major bottlenecks or addressing missing links. Maybe I'll just go for to present three of them. We have the Negrelli Viaduct in the Czech Republic, which is located in a congested urban area of Prague, and it's an important link with the suburban transport routes with significant passenger flows. And the works will increase the railway capacity on the section, ensure compliance with the applicable technical specifications for interoperability, and increase the speed from 40 to 60 kilometers, which of course will lead as well to reduce traveling time. Then the next example is the Gothenburg port line in Sweden, which is part of a global project which enables freight transport from across the Nordic region to the maritime Gothenburg port. The action will finalize the global project by completing the construction of a double track on the last section of the line, and so 3.5 kilometers of railway roughly will be upgraded to double track. This will, of course, when this is being finalized, it will reinforce the importance of rail transport in the Gothenburg region. Then maybe a last example is E-Rail, which aims at ensuring interoperability within transport modes and the removal of administrative and technical barriers within the trans-European transport networks. And the idea of the action is to support, as you can see, railway undertakings, infrastructure managers or wagon keepers in Spain, Portugal and Italy, as well as other actors who are involved in rail freight transport with the implementation of the tough TSI standards in order to achieve as well interoperability and data safety in European Union's railway system, as well as freight services management of connections to other modes of transport. So these were a bit of the different examples. And if I move to the CEF Transport 21-27, the transport budget is 25.8 billion that we will have available for transport. It will of course be very important in the move to the green, to reach the Green Deal objectives. And 60%, as you can see, which is I think a very important target, is that 60% of the budget will be allocated to projects in line with the Union's climate objectives. Now, of course, this is important because none of the European Green Deal objectives, like the cut of 50% of CO2 by 2030 and net zero CO2 by 2050, can be achieved without a substantial greening of the transport sector. Then coming closer to where we are today, so maybe first a word on the Transport Call 21. As you surely know, we launched the first calls in September, on the 16th of September, with a deadline on the 19th of January next year, with a global budget of around 7 billion. And we will have similar calls and a similar approach in 22 and 23. And of course, all of this, if you need more information, you can find on CINEA's website. Even I still have to get used to CINEA, so sorry for that. Then as a conclusion, next slide, please. I would like to say that, as you've seen, and I've probably been a bit too fast, but nevertheless, to give you a bit of an idea, CEF1 has already delivered quite some important results in terms of improvement of the TEN-T network and of the railway network in particular. But of course, with CEF2, we intend to go even further and to get substantial improvements like having more capacity, more electrification, a better traffic management system, more interoperability, and of course as well, less rail freight noise. Now, in our sessions today, we will have the opportunity to get direct feedback from CEF beneficiaries who have successfully implemented some of these projects across Europe. We will as well have discussions with key players like the ERTMS coordinator, ERA, Shift2Rail. We will discuss with them the challenges that are lying ahead of us and possible solutions in the development of railways. So this was my introduction, and before all of it, and before we go to discussions, I would like now to pass the floor to Herald Ruijters, who, as you know, is Director on Investment, Innovative and Sustainable Transport in DG Move, and I would say in particularly in charge of the CEF part. So Herald, the floor is yours.
Dear Dirk, dear colleagues here in the room and online, dear project promoters, dear friends of rail. Thank you very much, Dirk, for inviting us to also say a few words at the start of this seminar, which comes here at a very appropriate timing in the European Year of Rail. Let me focus that a little bit also, this timing. As you know, we have been launching under the new Commission of Ursula von der Leyen in December 2019 the Green Deal in the 2 first weeks of this new Commission. And exactly 1 year later, our Commissioner, Adina Valian, who sends her kind regards to all of you, has been launching the new Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy. And 1 year later, we are in this European Year of Rail. Because if we decline from the Green Deal to the new strategy into the actions, then of course, as also was highlighted by Dirk in his presentation, rail is a transport mode that can really deliver. It can be and shall be the public transport backbone that is absolutely necessary for transport in Europe. And so also the objectives that we have set in the Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy really focus on that by doubling rail freight and tripling high-speed rail, for instance, to just mention 2 of them. But also the events of the last days with the hike in prices of energy have also demonstrated the right choice, as the energy consumption of the rail transport mode is 6 to 7-fold lower than any of the most competitive modes in that respect. So we think that the European Year of Rail is something that is very well chosen and very well lived through by all of us. And this seminar with so many participants demonstrates that we are, I think, on the right track. And that, I think, is not only just for the word of it, but literally also what we are doing. And again, Dirk has been highlighting many of these projects. As you know, dear colleagues, we have been touring with the Connecting Europe Express 36 days as of the 2nd of September to the 7th of October through all of Europe, crisscrossing the continent. And that journey has been worked upon more than 2 months to be precisely traveling along all of these projects that Dirk has been highlighting, whether it was the Beira Alta Line or the Y Basque or Lyon-Torino or Brenner or Rail Baltica, or all of them have been passed by. And in many of those journeys that we have been discussing, Dirk, also jointly, the project portfolio that you are managing from CINEA side with all of you, coming back to physical meetings and having the advantage of the direct contact and knowing the latest state of the art. And here I would like to stress from DG Move side how much this building is, I think, a valuable one that we should keep for the future, because the intrinsic line and fitting together of the TEN-T regulation and the Connecting Europe facility that were set up in the new regulations in 2013 are to be continued with a strong emphasis also for the future, which is what we have been doing together with INEA and now CINEA, and which we are doing also through the new CEF2 that you have been highlighting, Dirk, and the new TEN-T regulation, which will come in December of this year, dear colleagues. In there, we would like to express this ambition that we are living now through the projects that will see the light until 2030 on the core network, but also already looking at the ambitions that are going to come beyond 2040 and 2050, which are needed to implement the Green Deal. Because, of course, we are now in an implementing phase for all those projects for the core network, but we know also that the budgets are constrained and that we should focus the money in the best possible way, implementing it, Dirk, also in the best possible way. And I hear very clearly when I also travel through Europe that the Connecting Europe facility and the way you are managing this here, and I also look at Andreas Boschen as the department head, is exemplary. It's exemplary in a way that it is so clear and that everybody knows exactly what to expect from this funding source of the European Union. I still think that we have a number of miles to go. And this is also what we will be doing when we will now, of course, having launched the CEF2 calls, which are open until the 19th of January and which will be repeated in the years 22, 23, 24, which we will also, we are going to table our proposal for the TEN-T in December, combined also with a communication from my colleague Director Christian Schmidt on passenger rail, in order that he also will table further proposals in 22, and which will of course be linked again also with other actions that are done under the Connecting Europe facility, whether they are on ITS, whether a new directive will come in December, whether they are on urban mobility, where a new communication will come in December, whether there are more interoperability issues, where there will be further proposals in 22 to come. Thereby, I think that we are well set, Dirk, dear colleagues, for a future that should keep us together in this community here, of course, that is attending this seminar, that are implementing the projects on the ground. And I would like to congratulate you, Dirk, with your CINEA colleagues for all the work done. I think it's an exemplary way that we are managing this large portfolio of projects, but also all of you who are online and here in the room for your very hard work that you are doing in order to make this ambition that the Commission through Ursula von der Leyen put forward on the Green Deal, that all Commissioner Ms. Valiant put forward in the new strategy. So we have a clear agenda ahead of us. We know what to do. Budgets will be constrained, but through a joint effort and through a joint, I would say, focus on delivery, I think that we can go a very, very long mile and really walk that path that we have designed ahead of us. As a recollection of what has been done over the past 36 days of the Connecting Europe Express, with all of you and also all the CINEA colleagues involved, we have been making a short video that will make the transition between the introduction given by Dirk Beckers and myself and the panels that will have, of course, the content of this seminar this morning. So I would like to invite also the team here in the room to launch the video. And I wish you a very pleasant and very fruitful seminar here this morning, which will then in the end be concluded, as Dirk announced, by Henrik Hololei, my Director General. Thank you very much and have a very nice morning here.
Thanks for your compliments on the agency. Of course, I would say as well that it's as well to a big extent because of the very good cooperation with DG Move, so thank you for that. And of course, before we move on, the movie is being prepared, so I would like to say that after the movie I will pass the floor to Andreas Buschen, who's Head of Department on Sustainable Networks and Investment in the agency, and who will be the moderator for the first panel. But let's first watch the movie.
CINEA has become
we hope we will come together to put at the heart of our future mobility, smart and resilient, the train in Europe.
I love traveling by train because it's sustainable. I really love to look outside the window and capture the beauty of the landscapes in my photography.
So having an important railway system in Europe is very important because it allows us to travel very fast from country to country like we are doing now. I have my little office, I have power, I have Wi-Fi in the train, so I can do a lot of work here during a long trip.
The rolling road is really important for our country because we shift trucks from road to rail. That means that we save the environment, we have a good impact for the people living around the transit routes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Nice memories, I would say, for all of us who have been on the train in different locations. And I understand it's a sneak preview of more video material which will become available to recollect these adventure of the train across Europe. We will now start the two panels with CEF beneficiaries and stakeholders. In the first panel, we will look at classical railway infrastructure, while the second panel, managed or moderated by my colleague Morten sitting next to me, will focus on the single European railway area and aspects such as ERTMS, interoperability, and innovation. So in the first panel, we will hear hands-on experience from 4 projects and then the perspective of a coordinator, Madame Trautmann. I will try to apply a tough time management to allow for an exchange between the panelists and also for taking questions and remarks from the audience. Please go to Slido and use the hashtag CEFRail. Feel free to come with your questions. Please indicate if your question is addressed to a specific panelist. So I suggest we start now with panel 1. I will introduce the speakers one by one and give them the floor for an introductory remark. And my colleagues are starting also the slideshow. So where do we start? Let's start in Italy. Let's start in Milano, where the Mediterranean and the Rhine-Alpine corridors are meeting. And we have been supporting there the rail connection of the Malpensa airport to Milano and to the TEN-T core network since many years. Massimo Corradi, you are in charge of the EU project management at the airport. Please tell us how these projects are contributing to better rail services, and please do it within 7 minutes. The floor is yours, Massimo.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Very well, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this great opportunity. I'm very pleased to be here today. This is for me is very familiar because I start my cooperation with the European Commission from 2003. But overall, as today the focus is rail, for me that I'm son of a train driver is a very pleasure and explain about this. Great opportunity to explain our project that I think is a very unique case in the context of the TEN-T and CEF grants. We received several co-financing, and with we did all the job, but overall the result was great. So I start to present my project, the so-called Malpensa North Access, in line with the EU line of the regulation. Malpensa Airport is core node of the Mediterranean and Rhine-Alpine corridors. In terms of the EU added value is clear because the project is perfectly in line with the policy, the transport policy, in terms of the impact on the lives of millions of people. We live, the project is in an area where one of the most rich in all Europe, creating new transport opportunity and spreading the knowledge of the benefit of the intermodality. Also permit the creation of new relation of a cross-border dimension, thanks that we are very near of Switzerland, that is our catchment area for our airport, and also it fully integrated the high-speed line with a major TEN-T core network. Please, next slide. Thank you. Okay, the North Access, our original global project, is a two-phase greenfield project connecting the two terminals, phase 1, completed in December 2016, and the extension of the railway line from Terminal 2 in the north direction is the phase 2 current ongoing, in order to connect Milano-Malpensa Intercontinental Airport with the Sempione and Gotthard International rail routes. Thanks to the realization of this project, the Global, it will be possible to connect the airport with Switzerland through the Rhine-Alpine corridor. Moreover, it permits to complete the ring around the airport and strengthen the service in Milano and via Gallarate, and creating new possibility of connection with Lugano, the Canton Ticino, the south part of Switzerland, through the station of Gallarate. Finally, the construction of link between the Malpensa Terminal 2 and the Simple Line permitted to connect the Rhine-Alpine corridor with the Mediterranean corridor and the high-speed line between Torino and Milan, avoiding, this is a very key point, the passage from the node of Milano. Next slide, thank you. The main goal are to complete the railway connection with Malpensa Airport that we began in the 1999, just 1 year after when we opened the new terminal. That please just let me remember to everyone that Malpensa 2000 was one of the original 14 projects of the TEN-T program in the 1994. So in order to make the service more competitive, to increase the number of passengers who choose the train for the connection to and from the airport, to reduce traffic congestion and the need for short-haul feeder flights. Next slide, please. A crucial milestone for the construction of an attractive intermodal system based on integration of air transport and rail transport was the opening of the rail link between Terminal 1 and Terminal 2, 3.6 kilometers, in December 2006. This new connection has completely modified the accessibility scheme to the hub, because in terms of service, in terms of more connection, and also we can reach through the central station more long distance destination. Next slide, please. Phase 2, the phase 2 is ongoing. We just complete the tender phase. We sign the sorry, I forget. I had to remember that this is a joint project implemented by Ferrovie Nord, our traditional party. We started together in the beginning in 2010, and with the coordination of the Lombardy region. We are the Ferrovie Nord is ready to sign the contract with the general contractor in the coming weeks, and so to start with the detailed design, and the idea is to open the site works at the beginning of the next year, in time with the line defined by the grant agreement. The project concerns construction on a section of double track railway between Malpensa Terminal 2 and Simple Line. The Simple Line is correct to remember that is managed by RFI, the National Rail Infrastructure Manager, through two different branches, one in the north direction, one in the south direction via Gallarate to reach Milano, and one in north direction to reach the Switzerland. Next slide, please. In the following two slides, you can see the commercial benefit of the project. Obviously related at the phase 1 that was completed in the 2016, and in terms of the increase of the number of rail passengers was clear at the beginning. After 9 months, was 28%, and the figures that I show you now are the last consolidated date of 2 years ago, because last year the service, due to the pandemic, for a long time stopped. Next slide, please. Okay, this can show you clear what is the change on our system. So when we completed the phase 2, our station will be part of a whole network that can reach long haul distance or the regional service that as a rail mode is one of the important transport service in the whole Italy. Next slide, please. Okay, this is our story that started in 2010. I remember that day, and thanks to this opportunity, thanks to the opportunity of the call, we can involve the partner as Ferrovie Nord in Lombardy region that originally was not so expert about TEN-T or CEF call, to work together and try to have this support for the final design. After that, we repeat the exercise successful 5 times, but I think the first was very, very important because at that time, no an idea to the financial support for implement the project. And so thanks to this first step, the final design, the cost of the project, okay, and over that we can work in to involve the public and private body to support this project. Next
Massimo,
slide,
it's Andreas. Thank you very much. As I told you, I will be very tough on time management. I gave you already 3 minutes in addition, 30 so please come to an end.
I'm finished, sorry. Just to the role in this context, the role of as a catalyst, no doubt about the contribution. You can see I was public in what is the effort from public in private, thanks to the catalyst effect of the European support. And last, let me remember how we can do this, okay? Because the first phase we complete in 6 or 6, around just a few months after 6 years, very less the average in Italy for this kind of project. Also to remember the collaboration with our partner for the 2 company and the support we receive from the Italian Ministry of Transport, Lombardy region, and all the other stakeholders involved on the project. I think is everything, and I'm very available to explain or answer some questions later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Massimo, for this clear presentation. A long-term partnership, clear benefits for the transport system. It falls under the category linking major airports to the rail network, ideally to the high-speed network, so to offer real alternatives by rail to short and medium-haul flights. And I also noted the multi-beneficiary character. You are the airport in close cooperation with the railway infrastructure manager. I would like to recall the possibility for all participants to ask questions or put comments in Slido under the hashtag CEFRail. We go southeast now to Greece. Yorgos Logothetis, you are director at the Greek Ministry of Development and Investments, and you have really worked on many, many CEF projects. Today, you will present us a 106-kilometer rail line, which is the final upgrade of the Athens-Thessaloniki axis on the Orient-East Med corridor. And this project will cut the journey time between Athens and Thessaloniki considerably. And I would appreciate if you can also stick to 7 minutes and we show your first slide. Yorgos, the floor is yours, please.
Yes, good morning from Athens, from rainy Athens. It looks like Brussels today with a heavy rain. First of all, I would like Mr. Bosen to thank you for the invitation and the opportunity given to us to present the Greek experience for the financing implementation of the Hellenic parts of the TEN-T network and Orient Med corridor. Today, our presentation is going to be concerns the high-speed double-track railway line Tithorel-Yianoklea-Domokos. We had the chance with Mr. Beckers and Mr. Ruijters to have the trip from Athens to Thessaloniki, and we passed a very good experience for all of us. I would like to say a few things. First of all, that our service has the responsibility for the coordination of the operation programs financed by structural funds, and also we have the coordination of the CEF mechanism. So this gives us a chance to have a very good look and a very good view of all the projects of rail that are financed in Greece. As you can see in this slide, we have from CEF programs 47 actions that finance projects and studies in the transport sector. This is of a total budget of 3.8 billion euros, 1.9 billion of CEF contribution, of which around 600 million euro to Greek partners. From these projects, 70 projects belong to rail sector. As I mentioned before, from CEF and structural funds, we finance rail projects using complementarity of funds. Next slide, please. Now, this is the map of south section of the OM corridor. You can see the south part crosses Romania, Bulgaria, and mainland of Greece, and through Mos, we are connected with the island of Crete and also with Cyprus. And within this corridor concept, member states are given the opportunity to develop a cohesive, modernized network which will facilitate our cooperation. Next slide, please. As part of the OM corridor and under the auspices of the OM coordinator is the railway project that develops a multimodal corridor connecting Aegean Sea cities of Thessaloniki, Kavala, and Alexandroupoli with cities of Bulgaria that are in the Black Sea, and this is Burgas and Varna. Next slide, please. Now we come to Patra, Athens, Piraeus, Thessaloniki corridor. We call it PATHEP. It is fulfilling all the interoperability requirements and consists the backbone of the Greek railway network. PATHEP, it is interconnected with all the main motorways, Egnatia, Odos, and Patra, Athens, Thessaloniki motorway, with the biggest urban cities of the country, with a major freight centers, also with the main ports of Patras, Piraeus, and Thessaloniki, with airports of Athens and Thessaloniki, and also with the rest of the rail and road core and comprehensive network. Next slide, please. Part of the railway of line Athens-Thessaloniki is the railway section. You can see it in black, Tithorel-Yianoklea-Domokos. Next slide. As Mr. Bosen referred, next slide, please. As Mr. Bosen referred, it's 106 kilometers long, while the old line, you can see it in black, it was 122 kilometers, and it is considered of two parts. Tithorel-Yianoklea with a design speed of 200 kilometers per hour, and Yianoklea-Domokos with a design speed of 100 to 160 kilometers per hour. Next slide, please. Okay. The physical object of the project, as we can see in the slide, is consisted of Kalidromo twin tunnel. Each branch is 9.2 kilometers long. Orthris twin tunnel, each branch is 6.4 kilometers long. 12 smaller tunnels of total length 4.5 kilometers. 24 cut and covers of a total length 4.1 kilometers. 49 railway bridges with a total length of 6 kilometers, 32 grade separated road crossings with a total length of 2.7 kilometers, embankments and cuts 76 kilometers, and seven railway stations and stops. As we travel from Athens to Thessaloniki, then we first meet Tithorea rail station, then we have rail bridges. We arrive to Kalidromo tunnel as a 9.2 twin tunnel. Then we meet tunnels and rail bridges and we go to Molos rail station. Following that, we have rail bridges and cut and covers. Where, as we have said, and to Mr. Beckers and Mr. Ruijters, there is a very nice souvlaki there, if you would like to visit it. We continue through tunnels and rail bridges, and we go through Orthris tunnel, 6.4 meters long. We arrive to Agios Stephanos rail station, to Agies, Thamvakos, and we arrive to Domokos, finally rail station. Next slide, please. I have described that, so we can go to the next one. We can see the main financing of the project is around 1.6 billion euros. 1.3 billion euros have been financed from the structural funds. 370 million euros are from CEF 1. And also we have the contribution of the Hellenic state, and the total final EU contribution of the project is closing to 1 billion euros, exactly is 940 million euros. In the next slide, we could see some pictures. We see a Karas bridge in Domokos. It is, if you can see in the construction phase, in the left side, you can see the same bridge functional. Also, in the right picture, you can see section Tithorea Lianokladi. Next slide, please. In the left, you can see Tithorea railway station, the entrance of Orthis tunnel, and in the right side, the photograph of a railway bridge over Pathé, is the motorway from Athens to Thessaloniki, on the section of Kamena Vourla. Next slide, please. As we have mentioned, Tithorea Lianokladi Domokos project is in function. It's a modern railway line crossing a notably mountainous part of Greece with many difficulties that we faced in the construction phase. It is fully completed and it gives many benefits many benefits, as it's the increase of transport capacity for passengers and freight, the reduction of travel time from Athens to Thessaloniki by 15 minutes. So the travel time from Athens to Thessaloniki is 4 hours, and we are expecting to diminish it by half an hour because we are progressing with some upgrading of the line. We have reduction of the operational costs by electrification, and also we have a shift of traffic to rail transport that is more eco-friendly. Actually, the trip from Athens to Thessaloniki is less than 3.5 hours now, and we prefer to travel by train instead of taking the plane. Closing, I would like to say that our priorities as Hellenic authorities is the completion of the OM corridor of the Greek interest, the elimination of bottlenecks, as well as the completion of the cross-border projects with the necessary synergies with related projects of other neighboring member states. And in cooperation with the Commission, we shall continue our efforts for an operational TEN-T network with co-financing from CEF 2 and structural funds in next PP 2021-2027. We would like to thank you once more for the invitation. Have a nice day.
Efraristo, many thanks to you for this very nice presentation. You zoomed in from the corridor perspective to the national maps, to the regional maps, to the project as such, and showing us also clear progress with bridges already constructed. So we are looking forward to seeing this railway line becoming operational. I would also like to highlight the use of different European funds. Indeed, we are combining our Connecting Europe facility, or better to say, you as member state, you are combining the Connecting Europe facility with structural funds, and in the future also the Resilience and Recovery facility. And we are having also close cooperation with other colleagues in other departments to make sure that the European funding is well used by the stakeholders. Many thanks again to you. Let's now move north and to Germany, in the center of Europe. If I'm not mistaken, 6 out of the 9 corridors are crossing German territory, and one of the longest corridors is the Rhine-Danube corridor, starting at the French-German border and then going to the Black Sea. Tamara Meyers, you are project manager at Deutsche Bahn, and you are working on the construction of a new high-speed line between Stuttgart and Ulm, addressing a significant bottleneck. So I hope you are with us, and you would then now be able to introduce your project. We are looking forward, but I would like to check whether you are connected or not.
Hello, yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Please. Take the floor, Tamara. You have also 7 minutes. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I hope everybody's enjoying the event digitally, and thank you very much for the invite. I'm very happy to be here today. As was said, my name is Tamara Meyers. I work as a project manager in the technical project management team on the Deutsche Bahn Projekt Stuttgart-Ulm project. We can jump to the next slide. So today I want to talk about some of the highlights on the project, look at a bit of an overview of the project, the new build line and the Stuttgart S21 section, talk about the CEF contribution, particularly with the European train control system, and then have a look at some of the challenges and benefits of the project. Next slide, please. The Stuttgart traffic node. Sorry, the next slide. Yeah, to the next slide, thank you. So the Stuttgart traffic node is part of the Rhine-Danube corridor and is an integral element in the implementation of an interoperable rail network between Paris and Bratislava. The proposed measure is a project of common European interest because it serves the objectives of the Trans-European Transport Network. The connection from Stuttgart to Ulm is currently the most serious bottleneck in the priority EU project Paris, Strasbourg, Stuttgart, Vienna, Bratislava. The current link between Stuttgart and Ulm has reached its capacity, and the technical equipment is obsolete. The speed limit on the Geislinger section of the line at 70 km per hour is an all-time low for the high-speed link in the Trans-European network. Next slide, please. So here we see the 2 sections of the project. In the top left, the S21 project, and then on also the new build line. On the right side, we see the S21 project blown up a little bit. The core activity here is the conversion of the existing 16-track rail terminus in Stuttgart to an 8-track underground through station for the mainline and regional services. The aim is to eliminate the Stuttgart main station bottleneck on the feeder lines. As the through station, Stuttgart S21 will have a considerably higher capacity and will enable shorter journey times to be achieved. Next slide, please. So I just want to have a look at some of the CEF contribution. Next slide, thank you. So we can see the total project costs here and the EU contribution amounting to 1.3 billion euros. Without the grants from the CEF, it would not be possible to meet the project deadlines. And without the funding, the project would have had a longer construction time and would need to reduce its scope. Additionally, the EU backing of the project is also essential to strengthen support for the project. Next slide, please. So to review some of the shorter travel times, we can see that between Stuttgart and Ulm, we have a 25-minute reduction in travel time between those 2 locations. Between Stuttgart and the airport, the travel time is reduced to 6 minutes. And we see some of the greatest savings between Friedrichshafen, a popular tourist destination, and the Stuttgart airport by over 100 minutes. So huge savings in travel times on the network. Next slide, please. So now I want to talk about the European train control system that we will be building on the project. The restructuring of the Stuttgart node is also a pilot project through the Digital Rail for Germany program. The program aims to introduce new digital control command and signaling technology, which would increase the rail network's capacity and eliminate bottlenecks. Digitalizing the network will also enable a continuous European transport area, and European standards will be replace country-specific technology. The vision is to achieve the most innovative state-of-the-art design based on digital signaling instead of electronic interlockings with a cutting-edge signalless train protection system. So that's our European train control system, and we'll be installing a level 2 system. The CEF is supporting the European rail traffic management system, component of the rolling stock purchase via the CEF transport blending facility financial instrument. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to talk about some of the challenges and benefits and bring a few photos from the project. So the main component of the project, which I talked about before, is the main station conversion. We'll be turning that 90 degrees. Just to give a little impression of the south end of the project to show some of the complexity of it. Next slide, please. We can see here on the lower right-hand side how we are colliding with some of the existing infrastructure and some of the different stakeholders and complexity of the project, particularly in the south end. The CEF supported the northern and southern connections of the main new station to the new tunnel lead-ins by helping us to accelerate commencement and realisation of the various construction pits. Next slide, please. So here we have a fantastic photo of the Fistalbrücke, which is the highest railway bridge in Germany and stands at 485 meters high. To the final slide, please. To touch on some of the benefits of receiving CEF support, we saw before the shorter travel times. We have an increased rail capacity and the elimination of bottlenecks in the system. Digitalizing the network will create a continuous European transport area, huge increases in regional capacity. Also an all-encompassing transport concept that also benefits the environment. Huge economic benefits in the region and externally as well. And the CEF funding has supported the public project partners in implementing Stuttgart S21, greatly contributing to the project objectives. Thank you very much. If there's anything that I've missed, we have a great stuff on our YouTube channel and also on our website. And I look forward to the questions. Thank you.
Many thanks, Tamara Myers, for this interesting, fascinating presentation. Here in the room, we were saying amongst us, maybe we should do a competition of the nicest rail bridge, because there seems to be really some fascinating technological features. And I think it's also worthwhile highlighting the technical challenges many of our projects are facing, whether it's in urban nodes or in specific hilly or mountainous regions. We also appreciate your reference to ERTMS. I think the second panel will go deeper, because we are constructing infrastructure to be used and to be used in an efficient way. And ERTMS is certainly an important aspect. And I cannot stop without saying that we are also supporting the rolling stock in the region, who will then use the ERTMS trackside there. Many thanks for this, and I would like to recall that we can take questions under Slido #CEFRail. There are the first questions in. Maybe the panelists can look in parallel, and Massimo, you have already some questions so that you can prepare your replies. But we will now continue with the last project stakeholder, if I may say so. So let's move east to Poland, the biggest recipient of CEF funds. Gabriela Popowicz, you are Director of EU Funds at the Polish Railway Infrastructure Manager, and you will present the Polish section of Rail Baltica running from Warsaw up to the Polish-Lithuanian border. Myself, I had the pleasure on board of the Connecting Europe Express to travel between Warsaw and Białystok, and I can indeed confirm it is a single construction site, the whole stretch. activities are going on everywhere. So please, within 7 minutes, Gabriela, could you highlight to us these new builds? Please, Gabriela.
Thank you. I would like, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this seminar, to this conference, and introducing me. I have a pleasure to present some effects of the CEF support for Poland. Next slide, please. I represent Polish Railway Lines, which, in addition to its main goal, which is rail traffic management, is also implementing a large investment plan. Railway investments implemented in 2014-2023 are co-financed from EU funds, including the Connecting Europe facility, which accounts for 34% of the total value of our projects. Next slide, please. CEF railway projects are implemented on the TEN-T network, and the most important TEN-T routes passing through Poland include the Baltic-Adriatic Corridor and the North Sea-Baltic Corridor. The largest project in Poland supported by CEF is the Rail Baltica project. Next slide, please. The Polish section of the Rail Baltica, that is E75 railway line, begins in Warsaw and runs northeast to the border crossing between Poland and Lithuania in Trakiszki. The length of the entire Polish section of Rail Baltica is approximately 355 kilometers and consists of mostly existing railway lines, so it is possible to go by European train. But to the condition of the rails on the prevailing section of the line, the maximum speed currently equals 120 km per hour. At some locations, due to the condition, the speed limits are as low as 40 km per hour. So we intend, as the effect of the investment project, to increase the speed up to 200 km per hour and the end of the global project. So I mean, and the end of 2027. Next slide, please. Apart from increasing the speed, the main objective of the Rail Baltica projects implemented in Poland is to improve the quality of railway services. Completion of the rail link between Poland and Baltic states would create added value for the modernization supported by CEF. Next slide, please. Polish Railways Rail Baltica project consists of several separate actions. Next slide, please. We started still in the pre-accession programs in the previous financial perspectives. Till 2014, 4 projects were implemented. The projects cover preparatory works or partially construction works. Next slide, please. During current perspective, there are 6 projects co-financed by EU funds, including 5 CEF projects. Total cost of CEF is about 306 billion, and the share of CEF, the contribution of CEF for Rail Baltica, is around 1 billion euro. So this is a little bit tricky, this slide. Next slide, please. Under 2021-27 financial perspective, we are planning to apply for the co-financing of remaining parts of the railway lines comprising the Rail Baltica, and we are strongly counting on CEF2. Next slide, please. As an experienced beneficiary, we have several observations regarding the implementation of large investments financed from EU funds. First of all, the implementation of this kind of large investments is a very risky undertaking, and in the end, nothing fits into the initial plan, neither the time nor the budget. But anyone who has done at least a small renovation in the apartment knows this is a fact. All the more valuable are the moments when effects of the works can be presented, allowing to hope that after a comprehensive modernization, the goal of the entire Rail Baltica projects, as well as the objectives of individual actions, will be achieved. Projects from previous years were completed and significantly contributed to the continuation of works. Among all the CEF projects currently carried out on the Polish part of Rail Baltica, the first effects were achieved on the Warszawa-Rembertów-Sadowne and Sadowne-Czyżew sections. On the next slides, I will present some photo evidence of these works. So next slide, please. Among others, there is the pedestrian underpass in Jaśnica Mazowiecka. Next slide, please. The underpass in Mochów. Next slide. Around 35 kilometers of railway line on the Sadowne-Czyżew section, including the modernization of Małkinia station. Next slide, please. The viaduct in Topór. And next slide. Next slide, please. Still one before. No. The viaduct in Mochów over E75 railway line and the new state road number 15. You see the large how large this is this investment. And on the next slide, please. On the Czyżew-Białystok and Białystok-Ełk sections, for this moment, the main deliverables are documentation and administrative decisions. And concluding, I would like to stress that investing in such complex projects as Rail Baltica requires a lot of fight, self-denial, and enormous mobilization over many years on the part of all stakeholders participating in this project, from donors to contractors. Therefore, in the process of carrying out large investment, the role of ongoing monitoring is essential, as well as the ability to implement flexible solutions. However, what should guide us all is a common goal, and I hope that in the end of all projects finance finance Rail Baltica project, and the end 2027 we will see the effects. Thank you for your attention.
Dziękuję. Many thanks, Gabriela, for this clear presentation of a very ambitious project. I liked very much the long-term perspective, planning, design, construction. And I think as a program, we have moved from planning to design, and we are in construction in many projects. And these constructions are already bringing intermediate results, and we could clearly see from the pictures and the perspectives, of course, the network in 2030. And I think it is now time to give the floor to Katharin Trautmann, because she is one of the 11 coordinators, and she is in charge of one of the 9 corridors. And actually, the corridor Gabriela was talking about, the North Sea Baltic corridor from the North Sea ports to the Baltic countries and Finland. And of course, Katharin, your perspective is to have the core network up and running by 2030. So how would you see, Katharin, the main challenges ahead, please?
Thank you very much, Andreas, and thank you for the kind invitation. I think that this seminar is coming very in a good time for the reflection and knowledge about what the rail can give to the network, the European network. And it's also the consequence of a very successful journey of the Connecting Europe Express, where we had many conversations about railways, but in which also we could see what we have to do also, because we could experiment also some problems or some difficulties still. As you have said, I'm the European coordinator for the North Sea Baltic corridor, and my corridor is is linked to seas, the Baltic Sea and the North Sea. It comes from the Western countries like the Netherlands, Belgium, to Finland and the north of Finland until Sweden now with the extension of the corridor. And of course, this corridor is linked also to multimodal aspects. We have waterways, we have maritime seaports, we have maritime shipping. We have also, of course, a big activity on rail. But of course, between all these countries, my corridor is linked to the necessity to make a better balance between western part and eastern part of Europe. And this is the case with the main missing links, which is the Rail Baltica. The Rail Baltica we spoke about, and I'm very glad to see the presentation of Gabriela, because of course I look regularly on the progress of the Rail Baltica in Poland, and I want to thank all the efforts and the excellent contribution of Poland in the realization of the Rail Baltica, which links Warsaw to Tallinn and the 3 Baltic countries. This corridor, for me, is not just a simple transport corridor. I want the corridor to be an accelerator of the green transition. I want it to be a pilot project where we will make the European Green Deal happen first. The integration of the rail freight corridors will be a first step into that direction, but we need to go further. We need to roll out alternative fuels. Railways will play a key role in decarbonizing transport, but we need all modes of transport to decarbonize. We also need to ensure that rail infrastructure will be managed coherently to make it easy for railway undertakings, big and small, to use the infrastructure. I said the corridor is multimodal, but rail is particularly important. And the Rail Baltica is a new railway line from Tallinn to Warsaw, which will connect the Baltic states in European gauge to the main European rail network, when the rest of the network in the Baltics is in Russian broad gauge. This line will bring the Baltic state closer to Western and Central Europe, and it will open up connecting to the high north and beyond. Rail Baltica is also particularly relevant to this workshop. The Connecting Europe facility is the main source for the financing support for the project. Rail Baltica is a priority for me, and I know it is also a priority for the 3 Baltic states, for the Commission and CINEA too. But it remains, I must say, a challenging project. Ensuring smooth cross-border cooperation is not an easy task. In this context, I really appreciate the close collaboration with CINEA. The expertise and the technical understanding of Rail Baltica in the CINEA team really helps the project to develop. I would like to thank Dirk Beckers, Andreas Berschen, you, Andreas, but also Morten Bottom and Pietro for their great support. The path to completion for Rail Baltica will not be easy, but it's great to know that I can rely also on the supportive and competent team at CINEA. The role of rail on the North Sea Baltic corridor goes beyond Rail Baltica. Not all sections of the rail lines meet the requirements of the Trans-European Transport Network. There are sections that still need to be electrified. There are sections where the line speed for rail freight is not yet at 100 km per hour. And there are sections that are not ready for 740-meter long trains. ERTMS still needs to be deployed, and we need to improve the management of the infrastructure across borders. I'm sure that this will come through. Another point which is important, as I said, the corridor is multimodal, and rail needs to become the backbone of our transport system to meet our climate targets. This means that we will need to have better connections between the transport modes. This will require multimodal terminals to connect rail to road and to ports and airports, and especially the density of the traffic in seaports needs to have a very good connection to rail and to be able for the capacity to be able to transport the containers, for example, to the inland ports or terminals. So one of the challenge I have for this next period is, of course, the integration of the rail freight corridor in the corridor network. This will be a very hot topic, if I can say, but also very useful because we can see how freight and traveler transport by rail are connected and can be supported, and of course this will be a challenge for all the coordinators, but for me especially. But I have the chance to have a new infrastructure with Rail Baltica, which will be of dual use, freight and travelers. So this is an experience to have a new infrastructure with the dual use. And in conclusion, to sum up my main points, rail is of key importance for the North Sea Baltic corridor. I want the corridor to be an accelerator for the green transition. And of course, I'm very glad to have the CINEA support. With that, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup. Many thanks, Catherine. You have highlighted the challenges, but also the opportunities ahead, highlighting the need for multimodality with rail as the backbone. And I would also really echo what you were saying. Why are we doing all this? Why are we building bridges, tunnels, and so on? It is more than a pure transport network. We are doing the green transition. We are bringing people and businesses closer together. In the end, we are building Europe. We are really connecting Europe. I would like to thank all panelists for a good time management, which allows me now to offer the following. The possibility for the audience to ask questions in Slido under the hashtag CEF Rail. In between, I will ask one spontaneous personal question to all the panelists with asking you for a very short 1 to 2 minutes reply. We are implementing the EU Green Deal. We are implementing the sustainable and smart mobility strategy, and we are in the European Year of Rail. What is your main conclusion from this year, which is now coming slowly to an end, as a person, your personal view when it comes to rail infrastructure? What do you take from the European Year of Rail with you? Can we do a very short one, a 1 minute statement by starting with Massimo and continuing? Massimo, 1 minute.
Yes, I believe that this is a very extraordinary moment, okay, and I think that we can continue in this direction, okay, and I also appreciate this that the effort done by the European Commission in the last years, and also the will to go ahead, okay, and also in the direction of the Green Deal and innovation. So this is what I learned and I want to put in practice, and to go in the coming to work in this direction. So the project have adapted the new era, the new paradigm, and this is why also we can make some effort not only in the CEF but also in the Horizon program and with our similar topic. Okay.
Grazie. Yorgos Logothetis, what is your personal takeaway from the European Year of Rail?
Actually, as I mentioned before, Mr. Bosen, we have worked closely with structural funds and CEF I think the most useful period we have faced it with a TEN-T budget. Actually, it gave us a very good. I'm coming back, but it gave us a very good opportunity to mature projects. Actually, we had something like 600 to 700 millions of euro. We have maturated a number of projects that were used either for motorways and for rail. And I think it's something that we have to adopt it. Probably we can have a line that we shall finance only studies. It's going to be very important because as soon as we have, and we know that we are going to have some invitations for submitting projects, to have mature projects is the best thing that we can do. We have done the same thing in ANSRF in this programming period, and we have gained a lot of things. Also, innovation is something that we have to look forward. But we have to mature projects, whatever it is, even infrastructure, superstructure, or innovation, in order to have maturity and have, when you make the calls, we have the mature projects to have. This
Thank
is
you.
Our experience.
Thank you very much for underlining the maturity and the maturation. We need to build up a mature project pipeline, indeed. Tamara Myers, the European Year of Rail. I think the train, was it in Stuttgart? I can't remember, but yeah, probably it was. So what is your take?
I think my greatest takeaway from this year is just generally the momentum around the rail infrastructure and the projects that we're planning in the future. I think looking back on during the pandemic time in Germany, the Deutsche Bahn, all trains were running at all times. And I think a lot of the public really started to realize how important the rail infrastructure was within the network. So I think that's my main takeaway. And it's fantastic that the European Year of Rail was this year. And yeah, I think our past year's experience makes us more reflective of how important the rail infrastructure is and our future projects going forward.
Thank you. I think it's important to underline, let's say, the public service rail is offering. Rail is offering mobility, whatever it is, under whatever circumstances, even in difficult periods like COVID. I think it's very important that you underlined this. Gabriela, the European Year of Rail. What do you take away from it?
Hello, I think that European rail, by the kind of publicity of the rail, showed that to reach the objectives of the Green Deal will not be possible without this kind of support, this kind of mind of transport. And I think that it shows that investment in infrastructure is necessary, still necessary. And as a representative of the infrastructure company, I would like to stress that the primary, the investment in infrastructure is it's a primary base to reaching the objectives of the Green Deal.
Thank you very much. Catherine, you have been on the train, definitely. So what do you take away from this year so far?
First, I think that we could see and consider that without railway, as Gabriela said, it's impossible to decarbonize transport. So this is a necessity. Second, I saw that rail is still managed in a too national way, if I can say, because we need to have a more coherent and continuous management of the network for rail in Europe. This is my second remark. And of course, what is also very important is for travelers and for clients. For users, I think that railway stations, we could see also that they can be a real platform of services for new mobilities. So this is also a challenge in urban nodes. And my fourth remark is about the balance between freight and travelers, because of course we need to have more freight trains, but it's not so easy to make them running through cities and quarters. People don't like noise, don't like the importance of these trains, but we need also to make an understanding of the population of this priority also, because if we don't have sufficient rail freight trains, we will not attain our objectives.
Thank you. I would echo this. The European Year of Rail for me is both the opportunity but also the challenges ahead, and it's not a one-off. I mean, we in CINEA, together with you, we will continue to build the railway infrastructure of the future to serve the clients Catherine was referring to. I suggest we will use the remaining part of this session to go to a Slido now, where we have a couple of questions. I will start, let's say, with the questions addressed in general to the panel, and then I will ask the panelists to reply to the questions addressed to them individually. I think the first question, which I see on my screen, is very relevant. You're presenting today success stories, but not all projects are successful. What are the main issues faced by rail interventions? And I think this is a question to us in CINEA, because we have the overview, and now we can start a long academic debate. But to be in short, the problem is the beginning, I would say. The problem is the planning, the design, the contracting. This is the challenge, the most challenging part. You need to get the permits, the environmental permits, the building permits. You need to get public acceptance for your project. You need to get the buy-in from the different stakeholders, national, European, business, public authorities, and so on. You need to get your public procurement ready according to the European directives to get the best value for money. In the end, you are spending public money, so the taxpayer has the right to rely that this money is well spent. And then once, for us, from our purely project management perspective, once contracts are signed and the real work start, I think then we are feeling much safer, because then a big achievement has taken place. This does not, of course, not exclude cost overruns, which are a problem for many project promoters. This does not prevent surprises from a geological, hydrological, technological side. This does not prevent you from running into COVID or whatever. So, I mean, the story is not over, but I would say the beginning is the hard part, and up to the signing of the contracts. There was another question in Slido. Will there be a call CEF 3? So first of all, we have a couple of CEF 2 calls to go until 2027. There will be annual calls like the one which is right now open, and we again invite you to consult our CINEA website for further information. So I will rephrase the question: will there be a CEF 3 program? Well, I don't know whether we will call it CEF 3 or differently, but I think in terms of completing the core network by 2030 and the comprehensive network by 2050, in view of implementing the sustainable and smart mobility strategy and the European Green Deal, there will be EU support to transport infrastructure. And then whether we call it CEF 3 or something else, that we will see later. There was another general question which I appreciate, because it allows me to make the link to the next year. Free rail tickets to young people as Erasmus students would push rail to the top of the political agenda. Indeed, you may know that the next year is the European Year of Youth. And the European Commission has just, I think, 1 week ago opened a call for 60,000 free rail tickets for European youngsters to discover Europe. So there is a link, there is a bridge. And I think our young generation, we don't need to convince them about the benefits of rails. They want rather to take the rail than the plane. So what we are doing and building here, this is definitely what our young people are expecting from us. So now, can I ask Massimo? You have 3 questions. I will rephrase them in one way and ask you for one reply. EC funding was somehow limited. Was it nevertheless important? Is there a freight dimension to your North Rail access? And what is the feedback from the airport passengers and users? Maybe you could group these 3 in one reply. Massimo, please.
Okay. No, about fund, yeah, I think the rate of co-funding is not biggest, but I think is a good report from. In our case, it was very clear at the beginning what is requested, the support for the other stakeholder involved, and so the co-financing was the first brick. The other part, they demonstrate that they can complete the wall. But in any case, I suggest I join what you said about the beginning is the difficult phase. I think at the beginning, in the design phase, the co-financing 50% is a very good opportunity. So I think I suggest everyone to start in this way, okay, and do the work very well, okay. I indicate also in my presentation the design have to become realistic, okay, accept to make some reduction, and for sure the result will be very good. About yes, about it's possible also for goods. Yes, absolutely yes. We plan our link is it can adapt at this service. At the moment we have no any clear vision about this, but I know that we can also start on this aspect. The last one, if I remember correct, is the customer, okay, the feedback. I think the figures that I show you, they demonstrate that the growth from 2016 to 2019 was 28% every year in terms of passengers. This is the first answer. But also we made as an airport every month a survey. Okay, we ask several things. Also, what the feedback about the system of accessibility. The train received very higher rates. Okay, but honest, I don't know for who are not familiar with our air link. I think is a very good higher quality service in terms of the rolling stock, the price, the efficiency, the respect the time, and also the idea that we working every day to improve, don't stop.
Thank you, Massimo, and allow me to echo and recall the different co-funding rates. Indeed, for the general envelope, we can fund studies up to 50%, while for works it is less, but CEF2 has also increased the funding rates for works, and under the cohesion envelope, it is the same co-funding rate of 85%. So this is a very substantial funding. I would now ask Mr. Logothetis to take the 2 questions addressed to him. So one is whether the Greek economic crisis had a negative impact on the implementation of the project. And the second one, I have to scroll down, it has disappeared on my screen. There was something about yeah, there is it. The rail line south of Patra. Do you have plans to reactivate the rail line south of Patras in Greece? It is still in good condition. Mr. Logothetis, can you take these two questions, please?
Yes, actually, we would like to reply for the first question that it has been raised about crisis. Of course, we did have many implications. We have implication in the tendering, in the procurement, in construction, because all the people had to take the necessary protection measures in order either to tender. We have committees. If we have a tendering and would like to evaluate a proposal, to evaluate a contract, we have to make it through a committee. Just an example. These committees, they could not come together in order to evaluate. So we had many delays on this one. In the construction phase, again, all the constructors have taken very special measures in order to take and protect the personnel. So we faced a lot of delays in many projects. Of course, we try to because we have deadlines to construct a project and to deliver a project in order to be in the timetables that are set in from the agreements. We have taken the measures, and now we try with different ways to protect and give to speed up the projects. Another major problem that we face now is the cost. Because of the cost of the materials is rising, we face another difficult problem. But again, we have to face it, and we discuss with all the managing authorities, the contractors, how we can do that. So, crisis had many effects. And in many cases, we had requested also to have extensions. For the second question that you have raised about the south of Patras, we have discussion with the managing authority and the relevant OSE, the Organization of Railways, on how we can put again the line in order. We have faced many problems until now with the studies, with the situation of the line. We try to face it, but it's not very easy. We have allocated something like 17 million in regional operational program for this line, but we don't have the maturity to bring these studies in maturation in order to see how we can construct this line. Also, as I referred before, from 10T budget, we have financed the final studies for a part of the line and the preliminary studies for another part. It's something that we are working on that, but we don't know how and when we are going to do it again.
Thank you for this reply. And again, reality. You are describing reality of large railway infrastructure projects and the difficulties you are facing. I would like now to give two questions to Tamara Myers. Do the passengers know that this project is supported by the EU? And I can already reply on behalf of CINEA that we are paying a lot of attention that US project promoters are mentioning the EU support. And the second question is for you, Tamara. With all these investments on high-speed lines, do you expect an important shift from regional national flights to rail? Tamara, please.
Hi, thank you, Andreas. I can only echo your response to the first question. We promote in all of our work that the EU is supporting the Stuttgart S21 project. Sorry, the second question, Andreas?
The second question was, with the investment on high speed, do you expect an important shift from regional national flights or short-haul, medium-haul flights to rail?
Yes. Thank you for repeating the question. Yes, we do expect to see a reduction in the number of passengers taking short-haul flights within Germany. I think we've seen that between Munich and Berlin. The magic number was to get the line under 4 hours. So when we can reduce the time between Paris and Stuttgart by such a significant amount, we will be seeing or we expect to see a reduction in the number of people taking short-haul flights and an increase in high-speed passengers taking the train.
Yeah, and if I may complete, we have seen it in the past. We had the chance, my director and myself, to be on the first train between Munich and Berlin, which is a high-speed line in Germany. And now, a couple of years in operation, you definitely see the shift from airlines or flights to high-speed lines, and we have more examples like this in Europe. So I think there's evidence that high-speed lines can make an alternative to short-haul flights. I have now at the end still a question to Gabriela and then to Katrin. Gabriela, could you please develop how you, from the Polish side of Rail Baltica, you are cooperating with the Baltic countries?
Yes, so to be successful in this kind of complex project, to be successful, we have to talk. And this is the most important issue. We realize this cooperation by a series of common working groups. There are the meetings of PLK and RB Rail staff dedicated to the technical issues. For example, catenary voltage, platform high. We exchange our needs, our expectations. Sometimes this is not the only meeting, but I think the most important is to try to find the solutions which is good for both sides in this kind of investments who is on the realized from different parties, from different sides, and in different times. What is the most important, I think.
Absolutely. Cross-border multi-beneficiary projects are difficult by nature, but we are building a European network. So we need a European cooperation. We need to work all together, and we are doing this, including on Rail Baltica. Katrin, I'm afraid I have a difficult one for you, which is moving on my screen, but I try to find it. Yeah. It is hard to convince national authorities about the importance of cross-border cooperation. Are they only focused on the national network? Now, good luck for replying, Katrin.
Yes, it is a difficulty. And what I say very often is that trust is the most difficult to obtain between countries. So it's the role of coordinators to pass through the difficulties, to speak and to argue with the different member states and governments, sometimes in a smooth way, sometimes in a more tough way, because of course what is very difficult for a project is delays linked by disagreements or administrative difficulties, burden we can have in different countries. And of course, as we have for the Rail Baltica, for example, this situation between 3 Baltic countries, they have, but it's the case in all Europe, they have different regulation for land acquisition, for example, for authorizations and so on. So it's this is one part. The second part of the difficulties is what you said before, is the green aspect, the environmental issues. In this corridor, we have several humid zones protected by Natura 2000, and we have several parts which are very, very delicate. So this is also, difficult to imagine that we can build a new infrastructure in such places. And this was difficult to convince, for example, Poland or Lithuania, for example, to obtain that they could see trains or rail as a chance and not a damage for environmental issues. So this is the difficulties I see, but I think that in all the corridor, I can regularly see that member states, they look first for their own interests before the cross-border ones. And one of the topics is for corridors to have real cross-border, smooth and continuous in multimodal transport. And this is the main difficult thing for me. And to have the same schedule, to have the same agenda. And I can say that the next steps of the workshops we will do, the coordinators, we will try to obtain a better coordination also for the agendas, the national agenda and the European one, to have a sort of more integrative methodology to obtain the good results. Because, as I said, delays are harmful, but also costly, if I can say. We see that if member states cooperate regularly and with a very efficient way, we have better results. And thanks to CINEA, which helps for coordination also between countries.
It's a joint effort from all of us. Thank you, Catherine. I take the liberty, Morten, to take two more questions before handing over to you, which are general questions and which I think are very relevant. Do you think the electrification of road transport poses a threat to railway transport? Now, giving you my personal reply, no, not at all. I think also looking at the smart and sustainable mobility strategy, even if we are doubling, tripling rail freight, high speed and so on, there will be always in Europe a large part of the road mode transport still available. And therefore it is very important to electrify road transport. And by the way, this afternoon we are having an information day on the alternative fuel infrastructure facility, which is part of the big call my director was referring to. So we need the Green Deal on all modes of transport. We need more rail, but we need also a greener road. And the second and last question I would like to tackle is about prices. How do these investments influence the final price of tickets for consumers, especially with the competition from low cost on longer trips? So to be very clear, we are supporting with public money the construction of railway infrastructure, but we are not managing the prices, neither the track prices for the operators nor what the operator is offering price to users. But having said so, we want the infrastructure to be used, all of us. We want to have full trains, full freight trains, full passenger trains on the network, and therefore I think it comes very naturally. We also see a low cost developing in several European countries, and maybe this is more for the next panel, the fourth railway package, market liberalization. So I think indeed the question is very relevant. In the end, we are building infrastructure to making a better offer, including in terms of price, but also in terms of quality, comfort, reliability, safety, punctuality to the end users. And as Herald Ruijters referred to, there will be a communication before the end of the year on, let's say, future measures for improving passenger railway in Europe, which of course will also look at the pricing element. So I have taken 2 minutes away from the next panel, but as we have one concluding speaker less, this is okay. I would really like to thank all the panelists for their very good contributions and the very good exchange we had. I will invite the audience to continue asking questions now to the second panel via the hashtag CEF Rail. And Morten, you continue, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas, and good morning from my side, and welcome to everybody to to this event this morning. In this panel, we will look at the single European railway area, and we will look at the input that CEF is giving to the implementation of the single European railway area. On the one hand, we will look at two practical examples, looking at two CEF projects and how they have been implemented and their experience with this. But we also have speakers from the institutional side that will give their input to the discussion. This year is the first full year in which the rules under the fourth railway package will be implemented throughout the EU. This is the final regulatory step towards the completion of the single European railway area. An important pillar of the single European railway area is the enhancement of interoperability and improved safety. The creation of an integrated European railway area calls for improved technical compatibility of infrastructure, rolling stock, signaling, telematics applications, and so on. Over the years, national rail networks have developed different standards for infrastructure, different gauge widths, electrical system, safety and signaling requirements, and telematics applications that are unable to communicate one with the other, and making it difficult and costly to run train across borders and between member states. In the first panel, we address the more, let's say, classical rail infrastructure projects. With this second panel, we would like now to have a look at how digitalization of the railway system can contribute to the creation of a single European railway area, and how CEF funding can stimulate member states, infrastructure managers, railway undertakings, and other railway stakeholders to further digitalize their systems in a harmonized and interoperable manner. Of course, we need to look at ERTMS, the backbone of EU rail digitalization and a key component of the single European railway area. Mr. Martin Wojcik, advisor to Matthias Rüde, the European coordinator for ERTMS, who unfortunately could not be here today, will talk about the challenges that exist for ERTMS deployment in Europe and which role CEF2 support can play. We also have Mr. Josef Doppelbauer, Executive Director of the European Union Agency for Railways. The agency, as system authority, plays a central role in the implementation of the single European railway area and in promoting interoperability and harmonizing technical standards, a process in which cooperation between the member states in the EU and the rail stakeholders is essential. Then we have Mr. Carlo Borghini, Executive Director of Shift2Rail and Future Europe's Rail, the public-private partnership in the rail sector established under Horizon 2020, which provides a platform for coordinating research activities with a view to drive future rail innovation, to reduce fragmentation, and targeting broader policy goals of completing the single European railway area. We will hear their views, but first we will listen to two speakers, Mr. Harald Reisinger, Chief Information Officer at RailNet Europe, and Mr. Petra Bucinek, Head of Mobility Projects at Altis Group, two CEF beneficiaries. They will share with us the hands-on outcome of their interoperability projects in the field of telematic applications, how their actions contributed to the achievement of the single European railway area, and what role CEF support played in this aspect. So, with this, I would like to give the floor to the first speaker, to Mr. Harald Reisinger from RailNet Europe. Harald, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me the floor. My name is Harald Reisinger, and I have the big pleasure to coordinate also some CEF funding calls. We are concentrating today on one CEF funding call. This is an European-wide call with a couple of infrastructure managers, and maybe we can go right into the first slide. Why are we doing this? And it was said quite in the beginning. We are lacking about harmonized rules in the railway sector, and we are also lacking about harmonized digital solutions in the railway sector. And therefore, a CEF contribution is even essential that we can make the kickoff in this area. What is RNE standing for? Just one slide. Why we're doing this? We are more or less the operational coordinator of the European infrastructure managers, the Baltic states, and also Central Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, South and North is in. And our aim is to work together with the existing solutions, so not building your infrastructure, not going to ERTMS. So what
sorry, Harald, I'm sorry, we are losing you sometimes, the sound.
Sorry for that. My point is that the connection in the house is
now it's fine.
Is gone, and I'm just connected now via the mobile phone. So I hope it still works. This is the bottom plan B. So what we are doing, we're working on common rules, but also common digital solutions. And maybe if you're coming over to the next slide, we are seeing the framework about this CEF project. So we had a couple of co-beneficiaries, Heiming is coordinating that. And honestly, without CEF budget, we would not be able to do our part of this job, and we are having the central part of this job. We're having in countries like Germany, France, Austria, Spain, Belgium, and you see also Denmark, Croatia, and as said, so a couple of varieties of infrastructure managers building together digital solutions in a mid-term perspective. So the end of the project is already until the end of 2022. And what do we do? And we have a budget of 28 million. Honestly, 14 million are coming from the Commission of 14.5 or from CEF. 40.5 are coming more or less from the infrastructure managers. And without the CEF funding, most of the activities, I will tell you now, would not have been started or would have been delayed in one or the other demand. So maybe we can go to the next slide. We see here just, let's say, a small overview about the project organization and the major issues we are tackling. I think we can go already to the next one, going a bit more to the content, what we are doing. And I know it's digital and sometimes it's IT, so it could be that I will try to give over some explaining words to the areas we're doing. On the next slide already. Perfect. On the one side, we have motivated European infrastructure management. This sounds quite boring, but it's essential for digitalization to increasing the quality of the reference files we are having in Europe. What does this mean? Manager and also every EU has more or less different codings, different information about stations are named, but also lines are named and so on. And we have achieved in the last years that we're having a solid ground level of infrastructure data, regulated by the agency and defined by the European Commission, but now rolled out in a sense to build up digital solution. Otherwise, we will still have digital solutions just until the end of the border, not going cross-border. I think that's the major issue we have to do. This goes also with the second part that we're saying, yes, we have to bring also this information in a way together for all, let's say, required areas, starting from the first and the last mile, where we're having the rail facilities, going via the point level, which we have in the TAF and TAP side, the CRD, but also going to the network level, to having a complete overview and unique overview about the European railway network line from the infrastructure side in a digital way. It's not really the digital twin of the infrastructure, but it's a first level in that regard. And increasing that and bringing them together, we call this our big data. But finally, it's what we're doing inside of the sector. And this project was more or less the first, a big enabler doing this European wide. Cannot be done by one company. It has to be done by the whole railway sector. And we can maybe come to the next slide, where we see more or less on a bit on the technical side how this was done. Finally, it was done that all these services the rail sector are doing nationally would be combined to European solutions and using always the same information flow. So if you would like to see now a train running all over Europe, in former times it was quite hard to see, you can now go to the train information system, which was co-financed for this project, and you see a train running, in best case, coming from Norway and going to Central Europe, but also from east to west, without being blocked, and you don't have to go to different national systems. You can just see them in one area. The same goes if you would like to ask for capacity in the annual area. This is the path coordination system. Then you can ask capacity in the annual timetable cross-border, so over more countries together. So we have connected the systems of the infrastructure manager to give him a common overview about the available capacity and also making able that the capacity can be ordered. We can go to the next slide. which is one of the core issues. Maybe you know already about the digital capacity management. The digital capacity management has the aim that capacity at the moment, which is a big disadvantage to other modes of sectors in the rail, can just be ordered on long term in advance. And with the digital capacity management, we are trying to make a cross-border offer of a capacity on short notice. Short notice even means, again, 2 to 3 weeks before the train run, but making this harmonized possible all over Europe. Therefore, the issues you're seeing on the slides are required by using harmonized standards like a TAF and a TAF design, using European-wide systems like the fast coordination system, but even more, implementing this function in the national system so that DIMs in the same way are producing the same data, using the same workflow, using the same concept and the same process. That's the major part we are doing together with the infrastructure managers to make this happen. We can go to the next slide, showing a bit the concept what we would like to do. The concept is we would like to, and there we already quite far in advance, also together with the European Commission, with the agency, to build a level about this infrastructure data to be used all over Europe, cross-border, with a single European view on it. If we now go to the next point, based on that, infrastructure managers are defining their capacity model, so meaning split between freight and passenger, split between national European-wide traffic. So then the capacity already is defined in technical capacity bands. I don't want to go too much in that, but also defining the negative capacity. We call this temporary capacity restriction and coordinating these European-wide. It doesn't make sense that we're having works on one side of the border, and as soon as they are closed, they're starting on the other side of the border. So this is also partly and this system supported via this project. If you go into the next part, we see that based on this available capacity, finally we're doing the capacity allocation. And there we're having this connection to the European-wide PCS system, which is the offer from the infrastructure manager to the market to make capacity available at the moment in annual area, but going more and more to the short term and to the short term ad hoc. And all is always based on the same infrastructure, on the same capacity which is available. Coming to the next slide, we see that finally the train is running exactly on this capacity what we have defined before. Well, let's say this is the baseline for this capacity based on a European-wide, let's say, process and IT digital system to be implemented. I think this was the major part of my presentation. This would not have been possible if we would not have CEF funding. Not we, but also not our members. And coming back also a bit to what was said before, at which time CEF funding is really starting projects. In a lot of the points, as soon as the budget is granted to be available, the infrastructure managers, but also ministries and others actors starting to implement. Before, this is not guaranteed. It's good for the planning, it's good for making, let's say, alignments, project coordination, but the real projects normally are starting at the time when the budget is really available. Thank you very much. That was my part of the presentation today.
Thank you very much, Harald, for this very interesting presentation of one of your CEF projects, and also, let's say, highlighting, let's say, the importance of the CEF contribution to this is of course also a very important dimension. We will then move to the next presentation, which will be by Mr. Petr Bucinek, Head of Mobility Projects at the Altis Group. Mr. Bucinek, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to introduce the experience from the perspective of the private company. I mean, the experience with the CEF funding. My name is Petr Buchnicek. I'm from Altis Group. Next slide, please. Let me first briefly introduce the company. So, Altis Group is a small medium enterprise based in the Czech Republic. We are the IT developer focused on 4 different areas. We develop solutions for rail freight transport as well as passenger transport, also solutions for infrastructure managers and for logistics. We have been involved in more or less 10 projects under the Shift to Rail program umbrella, mainly in innovative programs 4 and 5, that is passenger transport and freight transport, and also in many CEF projects, and one of them I would like to introduce in more detail. Next slide, please. The name of the project was implementation of TAF TSI at private railway undertakings in the Czech Republic and Slovakia. In fact, it was implemented at 5 different railway undertakings in the Czech Republic and the other 5 small railway undertakings in Slovakia. The project has already ended 2 years ago. It was under the CEF Transport 2016. And the main target, as I said, was to provide an interoperable solution to small railway undertakings, which also need to fulfill the requirements of the specification for TAF and TAP TSI. Next slide, please. Well, the project itself was split into 4 phases. Even the very first one was quite challenging because we implemented the common interface, and as it was instantiated separately in each railway undertaking, and it had to be configured according to the needs of the particular railway undertaking. It was quite challenging, and then I'm not going deeply into the technical details of the project content, but in the next phases we dealt with implementation of various messages, as you can see on the slide. I think the more important is the outcome and the experience from the project. So next slide, please. Yeah, from the implementation perspective, I must say that we faced several difficulties. I wouldn't say obstacles, but let's say issues. One of them was that the current specification is in the process of revision. The revision is ongoing, so the specification was not fixed. It was changing within the project, so that caused these changes of the environment and of the requirements of each participant of the project, caused the additional needs, the need of additional work in terms of analysis of the requirements and the changes of the provided solution, and also as every infrastructure manager was supporting another way, another version of the specification, it also increased the requirements for the solution. And the last bullet says that many subjects are not ready to communicate using the messages according to the specification, so it also complicated the situation. Next slide, please. On contrary, the experience with the CEF funding was very positive. The possibility to co-finance the implementation process, which was necessary in any case, increased the let's say the interest of RUs and IMs. It provided the quite clear guidance and established boundaries, and I must say that the administration and legal processes were much more simpler comparing to other fundings, especially the national fundings, which are usually much more complicated to meet all the requirements, the administrative requirements, I mean. And last but not least, I would like to highlight a very good communication with CINEA's project officers. They were always helpful and ready to answer our questions. So it was really a very good experience from this, let's say, administrative perspective. Next slide, please. So why the tough TSI implementation is important? Why we dealt with that? Of course, it's a need. It's given by the law, but it's not the only reason. Of course, we mentioned already mentioned interoperability. All these standards or fixed description, specification of some rules of the communication or data exchange or access to information and availability of the necessary data simplifies the process, especially the cross-border traveling. So once the requirements are unified, it helps to improve the interoperability within the whole Europe, and this way it also contributes to the creation of single European railway area. On top of that, I would like to add that for example, the Shift to Rail program is a research funding, so it focuses on finding new ways, new solutions, or new approaches to the existing solutions, but it is not considered to be the source for the end user's solution. So the CEF funding, on contrary, is a very good source to continue to take over the outcomes of the research and continue with the solution and its implementation in an individual company or area. So this way we move from the plans and the exploration of possibilities to the implementation. Next slide, please. And that's a piece of recommendations, let's say. So the outcome from our experience from the mentioned project. It's important to establish and stabilize the specifications and to decrease the frequency of changes. I mentioned the train ID topic is just an example. This is the issue where the solution is much more closer now. At the time of the solution of the before mentioned project, it was still possible that the cross-border trains are changing their identification once crossing the borders, and it of course complicates the work from the IT implementation, let's say. But now the situation is much better. But maybe it's not the best example, but I think it's understandable. Therefore, the implementation process is moving forward. It's the continuous process, and maybe it's worth thinking about how to the operators and the infrastructure managers to start with the implementation, because as far as I know, the level of implementation of these tough specifications is very various in different countries. So we still need to, and I think the European Year of Rail and as well the Connecting Europe Express were good opportunities to pay attention to attract their attention to these questions. Well, I think it's all from my side.
Thank you very much for your input and for your experience with the project. Very valuable inputs both from you and from Herald on the previous presentation. We will now move to ERTMS a little bit, and we have Martin Wojciech who is advisor to Matthias Ruijters, the European ERTMS coordinator, with us. And Martin, I have a couple of questions for you so that you can share a bit your experience with ERTMS. Despite a comprehensive set of ERTMS specifications, and I'm thinking of baseline 3, deployment in Europe has not yet reached a critical mass, if we can say so, neither on the track side nor on board. How do you, as advisor to the ERTMS European coordinator, see this, and what are the reasons? How can CEF help? And maybe you can also tell us a little bit where, from your point of view, we stand with the ERTMS deployment, and what can we or should we achieve within the next few years?
Yeah, thank you, Martin. First of all, I would like to excuse Mr. Ruijters, who was supposed to come and attend this event, but for personal reasons, he did not manage to take part in this event. So he requested me to step in and share with you some ideas we have developed over the couple of last months. So first of all, I would like to say that not everything is gloomy about ERTMS. So the picture is more nuanced. So if you look at the truck side, of course, there are delays and delays. But at the same time, if you look at the mid and long time perspective, the picture is much more positive, even encouraging. So later on, I will tell you some figures, because over the last couple of months, we tried to extract all possible data from different databases in Europe and put them together. And I think we have a very clear picture of where we stand, where we go, and what we'd like to achieve in the coming years. As to the onboard, the situation is much more worrying indeed. Just to give you a flavor, from 2015 to 2020, the vast majority of the new rolling stock was put on the market without being equipped with ERTMS. It means that sooner or later they will have to be retrofitted, which is complicated and costly, and somebody will have to pay for this. The problem is that for the rail undertakings, there is no business case, or they don't see a need, or at least immediate need, to invest in ERTMS, because firstly, either there are limited number of lines equipped with ERTMS in the area where they operate, or, which is even more important, they can still use Class B systems everywhere. Meaning, ERTMS is mostly equipped on the main lines, but if you're turning left or right, you still need Class B systems. So for the time being, Class B systems is a must, and ERTMS is an on the top system, at least on board. So for this reason, railway undertakings are making any conceivable effort to delay equipment, which impacts also decision-making process for the infrastructure managers, because they are more and more likely to deploy ERTMS, but they don't want to avoid situation that they deploy ERTMS trackside, but nobody is using it. And we have in Europe cases that hundreds of kilometers are being deployed with ERTMS, but nobody is using it because there is no rolling stock. This means that they are also delaying trackside deployment, which impacts the decision-making of the railway undertakings, and they are delaying the equipment of the rolling stock. And again and again. So we are in a sort of a vicious circle, and we have to break this vicious circle. And for this, we have to agree on a number of very important decisions. Firstly, we have to decide that all new rolling stock must be fitted or pre-fitted. Then we have to accelerate trackside deployment, at least on the comprehensive network to 2040. And what is very important, we have to have a deadline for decommissioning of Class B system. So we cannot have a situation that we are keeping trackside several systems for half a century. It's completely insane. I know it's not easy, but it's possible. So we have an example from the United States. They managed to deploy the signaling system within a decade or so. And I know it's not that as sophisticated as ERTMS, but still. So they equip it trackside and onboard, and they have only one single system in the United States. It should be also possible in Europe, at least on the TEN-T network, in the next 20 years. How to achieve it? We need definitely a stick, meaning a decommissioning obligation, because it will incentivize really undertakings, and they will see that it's real, so we are not accumulating all the delays. Then we need also carrot. And carrot is, of course, public funding, national funding, but also European funding. And then we see, of course, cohesion fund, we see recovery, not least, CEF. And CEF is a pillar of the support for ERTMS deployment. I would say that the wind is sails, because we have analyzed the situation on board. And then I can tell you that locomotives should reach the age of 30 on average, 30 years on average. And in several member states, we have already a situation that the average age of the locomotives is 40 years. So this is a unique opportunity to render the fleet green and digital, equipped with ERTMS. As regards CEF, and I can tell you that I think we have already gathered a lot of experience from CEF 1, and we try to support different types of ERTMS related projects. So we had trackside, onboard, retrofitting, fitting, serial retrofitting, prototypes. We had mixed projects and pure projects. We had grants and blending facility, real costs, unit contributions, and so on and so on. So I think we have learned a lot, what works, what does not work. And well, unfortunately, we have to say that we did not manage to absorb all the possible allocation that was initially ring-fenced for ERTMS. And there are many reasons for this and many issues. So firstly, I would say much projects. And we experienced it in the past that many projects were not mature enough. Also, the time constraint related to implementation, which were very difficult for ERTMS, and cost overruns, and of course, suppliers were not always deliver the baseline 3 on time and at a price which was acceptable. What we can do in the future, and will do in the future, based on this experience. So firstly, we will focus only on the pure product. In the past, as regards trackside, and I think it's very important, we had projects which encompass also the overall modernization of the infrastructure, and ERTMS was the last element, the last component. So any delay in implementation of the trackside modernization affected also the fate of ERTMS component. And in many cases, ERTMS component was sacrificed because it was already beyond a possible implementation framework. So in the future, we'll support only ERTMS pure projects. Then what is also important, we have clarity and transparency, as it was also mentioned today. So now every year, there will be a new call with a given budget. And I think it's a very important element for the decision taking of the project promoters. So we'll avoid a situation from the past that project promoters were running because they thought that it's now or never. Now we will have much more mature, and it was all by a number of stakeholders and speakers today, among others, Yorgos, that mature importance to deliver projects on time. And there is also the question of unit contributions. We'll continue with them. However, the problem is that, well, some love them, some hate them, but they simplify life on both sides, and they allow also to focus on. Sorry, can you hear me?
Vaguely, so maybe you switch off the video, and then if at the same time I can ask you to be short on to wrap up. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So just very shortly. So we will also focus on the urban nodes, which is of key importance because we experienced in the past that ERTMS was deployed on sections, but not in the nodes. So we spent billions or millions on ERTMS, but unfortunately, ERTMS was not equipped in the nodes, so the impact on the interoperability was very limited. Very shortly on the figures where we stand. So I can tell you that at the moment, ERTMS is deployed on the core network corridors on some 8,000 kilometers. 10,000 kilometers are under construction. So we are not there yet, but we know that in general in Europe, more than 40,000 kilometers are covered by contracts, also outside core network corridors. And what is even more important, we analyzed the situation by 2040. And according to the data collected from different sources, out of 120,000 kilometers on the TEN-T network, only 20,000 kilometers will not be equipped with ERTMS, and Class B systems will be still requested in 2040. So this is a major progress and also a change in the mindset of member states and infrastructure managers, because more and more member states are going for a network-wide deployment of ERTMS, not only on the core network corridors, not only on the on TEN-T. They are going for ERTMS everywhere, and I think this is a very important signal that we will have one day a single European network and single European signaling system. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Martin, for this overview. What I hear you saying is that it has been challenging times, but that we are making good progress and that we are optimistic for a quite large or broad rollout of ERTMS in the coming years, even if there will remain some challenges. I will move to our next speaker, Mr. Josef Doppelbauer, from Executive Director at the European Union Agency for Railways. So, Josef, it's been more than 2 years, I think, since the fourth railway package granted you new responsibilities as regards, for instance, authorization of ERTMS on board or ERTMS trackside. This maybe allows for drawing some first conclusions on how it affected the railway market. And in this context, we would like to hear your experience, very hands-on experience as system authority with the progress in railway interoperability and ERTMS deployment, and also how is the fourth railway package going to give this even a stronger push in the future. The floor is yours, Josef.
Many thanks, Morten, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be here with you today on discussing the contribution of CEF support to creating the single European railway area. Indeed, Morten, the agency has received new powers as European Authority for Vehicle Authorization, Safety Certification, and ERTMS trackside approval. The actual implementation of that authority has in fact been completed only on the 31st of October 2020. We started with 6 member states in June 2019, and since the end of October last year, we have all the member states under our authority. If we can go to the next slide, please. We are faced with the problem in rail that rail is the only mode of transport that doesn't have global rules. And in order to connect Europe by rail, we need to make sure that we have common rules and we have common technology. And therefore, CINEA and CEF support are important steering instruments to help building what we call the single European railway area. And ERA, as system authority, is of course very happy to be involved in the project evaluation and in the preparation of the projects together with CINEA. If we can go to the next slide, please. We are in 2021 in the European Year of Rail, and I had the pleasure of being on the Connecting Europe Express for the first leg from Lisbon to Bordeaux, and I was also taking the last leg from Brussels via Luxembourg and Strasbourg to Paris last week. The Connecting Europe Express has shown that there is a strong will to improve the railway connections in Europe, but the Connecting Europe Express has also shown that a lot of work is still ahead of us. And the fact that this train, which has crossed 27 countries, has run for 20,000 kilometers, but it has also needed 55 locomotives. So that means for creating a real European railway system, we need first to work on the European mindset, and the European mindset has to be based on a common European vision. This common European vision has to be seamless movement of trains without technical and operational barriers. From a customer perspective, and here I'm referring mainly to passengers, this would also mean accurate and timely information on where the connections are available and on the ticketing. Currently, there is a strong tailwind for rail. We have the European Green Deal. We have finances available in the various national recovery and resilience plans. And on top of it, we have the CEF funding as a carrot that Martin referred to, but we also need some sticks. So in order to enable Go Everywhere operators and railway vehicles, come back to the new tasks of the European Union Agency for Railways, the single safety certification and the EU-wide authorization. Since June 2019, for your information, we have already authorized more than 25,000 vehicles, and amongst these vehicles, around 2,000 locomotives, and most of these locomotives are containing ERTMS. We have introduced with the TSI on operations in 2019 a harmonized view of operations, and we have eliminated many of the national rules. And next year, in 2022, with the new TSI package, we will have increased interoperability, and we will bring on the table the ERTMS game changers with this new TSI package. If we move to the next slide, I'm coming back here to the role of CEF. For me, the most important role of CEF, and where we work very closely together as system authority and as funding instrument, we need to create a coherent European railway network. And the coherent European railway network, of course, has to work on various layers. We heard in the previous presentation by Herald from RNE that digitalization is a very important task. And I fully agree that we need digital solutions in order to help optimize operation and to improve efficiency. But we first and foremost need to also work on the basics. And I have here copied the Maslow pyramid. And at the bottom of this pyramid is, of course, we need to fix the missing links. And the missing links include, of course, connections to ports, which do not exist in all cases. And it should also include connections to airports, as we heard in the previous session. Then, in many countries, the infrastructure managers lack the funds to maintain the track, and therefore we have speed and axle load restrictions. Electrification is incomplete. We don't have intermodal terminals. For the time being, there is not a single corridor in Europe where we can have the 740 meters train lengths from end to end, and where we have the gabarit of 4 meters. We still have many Class B train control and train detection system. We have nowhere in Europe end-to-end ERTMS. And of course, on top of that, we have the differences in national operating rules, also exemplified by the need to use different languages. If we build a coherent network, then of course we create a lot more possibilities to materialize the model shift to rail. When we have the basics in place, we can implement capacity management, as referred to by Herald in his presentation. We need to move further in data integration, and ERA is very happy to play the role here also as system authority, not only for ERTMS, but for TAP and TAF. I'm coming to my final slide, and on the next slide, please. We need to move, and the strong instrument here will be provided by CEF support and, of course, supported by the system authority as the technical guardian. We need to move from the current patchwork system to a target state that should be achieved after 2030, where we have a fully integrated railway system as part of the multimodal European transport system, where we have no borders between member states, and I mean no borders in the sense of technical or operational boundaries, but we should also have no friction between the individual modes. We have made a major progress up to now with the introduction of the TSIs, with the market opening and the role of ERA under the Fourth Railway Package, and with the creation of Shift to Rail. Now, in the coming decade, 2021 to 2030, we need to make strong progress, and we need to use the funds wisely that are available in order to create a technically and operationally harmonized European system, which means also harmonized investments. Coming back to the capacity management, we need to create an institution, I call it Eurocontrol for Rail, to make sure that we can manage capacity allocation across borders. And there will be the Europe's Rail joint undertaking with the system pillar to make sure that also from the technology side and from the system side, we create the preconditions that will lead us to the target state. And I would like to emphasize once more the important role of CINEA and of CEF support to make all of these aspects happen. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity speaking to you today.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Thanks for providing this overview, and in fact, you make the bridge to the next presentation, because our next speaker will be Mr. Carlo Borghini, who is the Executive Director of Shift to Rail and Future Europe's Rail. So indeed, railways are entering into the digital era, along with other businesses in the world, of course. And Shift to Rail is playing an imminent role in the area of research and development related to railways digitalization. ERTMS is one of the important components and a kind of backbone to the digitalization of railways in Europe. So, Carlo, what are, from your perspective, the key technical challenges for the railway stakeholders in the upcoming years to achieve the railway system interoperability? And how can you, with Shift to Rail, get to a real pipeline of innovation projects in the railway sector, from research to validation, standardization, and then implementation in CEF? I'm sure you have already some very clear ideas about what is in the pipeline with the work that you are doing. So, Carlo, please take the floor and give us some input.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all the audience, and thank you very much, Morten, for this introduction. As you said, we have the sequence of the speaker, I think, has been designed really with absolutely a major logic, and it provides, I think, also for the audience a story that we would like to say about how rail has to go. I have only a couple of pictures. I don't have a presentation, but the first picture is that what we are doing here is at the end to serve the European citizen, passenger or logistic value chain. I think you have seen this image, and you have seen this image also last Christmas. We know all the crisis that is going on at the moment on logistics. Also not in Europe, also in the US. Yesterday night, President Biden was on TV for the same reason. Every boat that is coming to the Rotterdam port with 40,000 containers, only 10 to 15% goes on rail, 50% goes on trucks. We talk about 10,000 containers per boat on highways going through Netherlands, Germany, and maybe the south of Europe. And if we go to the next picture, this is what often we all experience. And that many occasions we are going around and we see empty trucks. And I know that in some area we have a frequency that is much more high, and we have trains every X minutes. But how many tracks, network pieces are often empty? And at the end, what we want to do in Europe's rail, and we have started in Shift to Rail, we are working clearly with ERA and under the policy of the Commission, is that what Joseph just said, we need to have a seamless network of trains going around without any barriers. Would be for digital solution, would be for signaling, would be for infrastructure issues, and so on and so on. So Shift to Rail has been born as a program that was a technological driven program starting in 2016. And we started to have now some key results coming up. The European Duct Delivery Program, that will be one of the flagship programs on which we are working, into which 10 days ago an agreement was reached on a possible one European solution to be deployed in the future years. But also on the ATO, GO2. And we had also some announcement this week from some operator and suppliers of tests in Germany about ATO, in Hamburg, and not only. And this building upon the work we have done in Shift to Rail with the agreement of ERA on the proposal for the TSI 22, and so on and so on. What I'm saying is that we are transforming rail. But as you ask yourself in a question, is we have plenty of challenges. Yes, we have plenty of challenges. We have in front of us national legacy systems, where the introduction of innovation require major changes to current investment. And these require maybe also phasing out of existing system, meaning that we need to rethink about the life cycle of the current assets. Interoperability is a condition sine qua non. we need to go, as Joseph said, towards a one European rail network. I don't know if we need organization or not. What I believe is that if you want to have a rail freight moving around Europe without boundaries, we need to have data exchange between the infrastructure manager that will allow to have a dynamic capacity management. This, I think, is something that will be a key element in the future few years. We need also to look at the investment life cycle. And here, I think the connection with the Connecting Europe facility with CINEA also will be fundamental, because what we do in research innovation, also the colleague that spoke before from, I think was from the Czech company AGD, if I'm not mistaken, or from another company, he mentioned the fact that we do in research innovation, we arrived to up TRL 9 at the best, so large-scale demonstration. But at the end, we need to address how the solutions that are developed in research innovation, once authorized, one have been gone through the process in ERA, go to the market. And I think this transition process is a fundamental one. Clearly, there are risks associated to this type of process. Risk associated to the regulation, and that today is still regulating technology, and it doesn't regulate performance. We have risk about the standardization processes, how we can accelerate the standardization and we not lock down ourselves in such type of standardization. We have too many tailor-made solutions. If we want to have a European network, we need to have vanilla solution. We need to have trains that are platform that has been developed maybe in other sector, like in the automotive, and this platform can be able, with intelligence on board, moving around the network. We need to take care of our staff. We need to ensure the training of the staff. And finally, we need to be sure that the supply industry is ready to invest in such type of transition processes. So the setup of Europe's rail at the end is an instrument, is a tool in the hands of the European Union to develop the technological and operational part that will allow to achieve the sustainable and smart mobility strategy. At the end, it's clear at policy level what we want to achieve. We want to have 3 times high-speed services in Europe by 2050, twice by 2030. We want to have 2 times rail freight by 2050 and 50% more by 2030. If you want to achieve this, we need to substantially look at the gaps, barriers that we have currently in the rail system and address them one by one. And Europe's rail has been designed exactly with these key objectives. We have 5 key priority areas that we are moving forward. The first one is the European traffic management layer. Joseph referred to it as in another manner, but at the end is the same concept. How we can have a European control supervision monitoring to arrive to dynamic capacity management of the rail system. Not a data sharing, not only sharing information, arrive to the dynamic capacity management. The second one is the digitalization and automation of the train operations in order to assess the different business models that are needed on the different parts of the European networks. The third one is the sustainable asset, because we need to have a system approach. So if we are looking at intelligence on board on operations, we are looking on how mature operations. We need also to look at how the infrastructure, and also this was indicated also by Joseph in one of the critical elements he mentioned, how infrastructure is kept up to speed. And we have 2 specific action areas, 2 specific areas of key priorities. The first one is no-brainer, is rail cargo. Rail cargo offers a huge amount of opportunities, and these opportunities start from enabler like the European DAC that we are chosen 10 days ago, as I mentioned, but also introduction of automation, digital platform, breaking down the barrier between the different type of operators and infrastructure manager, up to arrive to the famous long trains to a complete different distance, including clearly the impact on the infrastructure. And finally, the fifth area of action of a key priority is the so-called regional lines, or the unused line or dismissed line, because we can create new services for the passenger. And if you bring together the idea of the sustainable smart mobility strategy, to bring together 3 times services in high speed, we need to bring people to this hub of high-speed network, connecting the capital of Europe and towns with more than 500,000 people via this regional line, for people and for goods. And this is really the type of, I think, actions will help us to address to arrive to one European rail network. Now, I would like only to conclude only making reference to the relation with CINEA and the deployment under CEF. I think our key fundamental component closing the life cycle of innovation in the rail system. And from this point of view, I think from our it's our responsibility as a research innovation program to feed CINEA and CEF with a series and pipeline of innovation that will be ready to be deployed in the next years. This is really how I see our relations. And as I would go one step forward. I would almost say we need also to start to finance only what is coming from innovation. I think we need to create a baseline in Europe that will be built upon the RTMS, and this will be the baseline into which we can introduce the different innovations, and in the future invest on the innovation path. Clearly is a big and major endeavor, but at the same time, if we want to be concrete and we want to have and achieve the European Green Deal targets, the Fit for 55, that is also the driver of this event, I think rail can be really the mode of transport that can help and support the other modes of transport to reduce the carbon footprint while ensuring mobility and logistics for all of us. And I think this we have experienced during the last 18 months, the major value that we have of the freedom to move around our continent. So Europe's rail is really the tool in the hands of the policymakers, of the Commission, the member states, to create this pipeline of new ideas to transform the rail system during the decade and start to deliver major changes that will help to transform the current way we operate the rail system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carlo, for this interesting input. And also thank you very much to the other panelists for their very interesting input. In fact, we are running a little bit out of time, but I have to admit I didn't want to be too strict on you with the time management, because I think the input that you were providing has been very valuable and very useful. So what I would like to do is to move to some of the questions that we have received in Slido, and then see at the end if there will be some time left for some exchanges between you as panelists. I'll start with a couple of questions that have come regarding the Connecting Europe facility. There is a question how will CEF promote the TAF-TAP implementation? Well, actually, the way let's say we are promoting the TAF-TAP implementation is that we are supporting projects, as we've seen today, implementing TAF-TAP and TSI. So this is the way the Connecting Europe facility is supporting the implementation in that area. So on the rail interoperability, there are financing possibilities for TAF-TAP implementation. There is also a question if railway undertakings also benefit from CEF funding, and the answer is yes. Like with the implementation of TAF-TAP in the area of interoperability, there is a possibility. There is also the possibility under ERTMS for onboard equipping of ERTMS of locomotives. And then I think there is a question on can you tie all CEF rail funding to ERTMS deployment? As Marcin Wojciech was alluding to in his intervention, the ERTMS can be supported under the Connecting Europe facility as standalone projects only. And the reason is, as it was explained, that we have had many rail infrastructure projects with ERTMS at the very end, and due to delays, the ERTMS part has very often been cut out in the end. So therefore, our experience is that it is better to have ERTMS projects as standalone projects, so to say, and this possibility remains. So proposals can be submitted both for onboard and trackside under the priority of ERTMS in the Connecting Europe facility. I think if there are a few questions also for ERA, so there is a question for ERA how it works in practice, the cooperation between ERA and the national authorities. Perhaps you can answer that, Joseph.
Well, in practice, we have to distinguish two cases. We have to distinguish the case where the application is for operation within one member state, where the applicant has the choice between the National Safety Authority and the ERA, and for any operation that is in more than one member state, where it is obligatory to go to the agency. Now, in any application that goes to the agency, we have to immediately defer the file to the national authorities for the assessment of the national rules. Of course, the agency assesses all the European rules, meaning the TSIs, and the national authorities focus on the national rules, and in the end, the final decision is done by ERA. This is the standard process, and we have already, for vehicle authorization, taken more than 2,000 decisions, resulting in 25,000 vehicles being authorized. On the safety certification, we have already taken more than 50 decisions. A second possibility for cooperation with national safety authorities is the pool of experts. So here, the experts from the national authorities work on behalf of ERA, and we have with some of these national safety authorities already very good cooperation. So there is some national safety authorities who have already taken over also project management tasks, and from my perspective, I don't see a real difference whether the project is managed internally in the agency or from the NSAs. Of course, this good cooperation works firstly with those countries who have already started in 2019, with the new countries that joined in November 2020. We are working to improve the cooperation. But all in all, I believe it's one step also to forming homogeneous and harmonized view of application of the rules to the authorization of systems, both on the infrastructure and on the vehicles.
Thank you very much, Joseph. We have some questions also for related to Europe's rail, or to shift to rail. So we have a question: are TAF-TAP TSI taken into account in the overall plans of Europe's rail program, so that the link between TSI requirements and research is ensured? Carlo, can you say something on that?
Thank you, Morten. Yes, not only the TAP TSI, but all the TSI are part of our program in two ways. The first one is that clearly they become for us a framework into which we need to assess and work, and at the same time to work in the direction of which needs we see if we are innovating some, or we are new concept to I would say amend or to adjust to make new proposal for the evolution of the TSI framework. And in this respect, we have set up in Europe's rail the system pillar The system pillar has really the objective to bring together the sector beyond the membership and the current and future membership of Europe's rail in order to converge and on any type of systemic changes that we need to introduce in rail and be sure that at the moment in which there is a proposal going to ERA, this comes as a sector proposal that should facilitate later on the processes within ERA while ensuring at the same time ERA role as system authority and independent assessor of what is coming out from what will come out from Europe's rail. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carlo. Maybe we can take a last question before we run out of time. And I see, Martin, that there are some questions related to ERTMS. Maybe we take the question, how will EU address the differences between member states in the deployment of ERTMS? Can you say something about that, Martin?
Yes, definitely. Maybe also without the visual part in order not to affect the quality of connection. It's a very good question. And I think already at this moment, we are implementing a number of measures like the obligation for the member states in case they are deploying ERTMS in the cross-border sections to establish a common understanding what is needed on both sides of the border to sign such an agreement and submit it to the Commission. Then there is also a new obligation, and this is more in the realm of Joseph, to submit any tendering documentation trackside to ERA in order to analyze the content of this documentation to see whether all aspects have been taken into consideration and addressed properly. And only if there is a blessing from ERA, member states can go ahead and be sure that what is going to be deployed trackside is following European rules. Then we are considering new measures, just to name a number of them. In the framework of the revision of CCS TSI, I would like to render the content of the national implementation plans more robust and more stringent in the sense that we would like to have a clear overview what is going to deployed on the TEN-T network line by line, year by year, also with an obligation to consider the decommissioning process. At the same time, in the framework of the revision of TEN-T guidelines, would like to have a sort of ERTMS forum, regrouping representatives of all member states. I would like not only to have a European coordinator at the European level, but also a network of national coordinators who would be responsible for the implementation of ERTMS in member states. Because the problem that we are focusing and seeing now is that in some member states, they are not deploying ERTMS, they are deploying or they are implementing projects. They are not seeing the bigger picture, as I mentioned. So we have trackside projects being implemented, but without rolling stock. And sometimes rolling stock is being equipped, but there is no trackside equipped. So for this reason, we need also in member states somebody who is seeing the bigger picture, not only the part of the sector they are coming from. And we need also this coordination. And we would like also to create this network of coordinators at the European level so that they can exchange views and learn from one another in order not to reinvent the wheel. And I see also some advantages of this situation because, as I mentioned, several member states are considering network-wide deployment. Yeah.
Sorry, Martin, that I interrupt you, but as I said, we are running out of time. So, well, clearly we can hear from your answer that a lot of things are being done to address this issue. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to go into to go further into this. So I would like to thank the panelists very much for their excellent input to the discussion. We have more questions than we can manage to answer, so it shows the interest for these topics. And and we could have continued all afternoon, I'm afraid. So, but we will have to stop here for this panel and hand over to the next part of the agenda. So thank you very much.
Again, and see you all there. We're already coming to the part of the conclusions, which I would say is going very fast, but like they say, time flies when you're having fun, so I hope you enjoyed it like me, the session. Before maybe, we have two concluding speakers. We first will have Monika Heiming, who's Executive Director of the European Rail Infrastructure Managers. And then to conclude, really finally, we have, I have the pleasure to have with us today, even physically, Henrik Hololei, the Director General of DG Move. But before all of that, I would like to thank all of you already, so that I don't forget this at the end, because I think it was very, very interesting. I'd like to thank all participants, but as well my colleagues, Andreas, Morten, and all the others who have been working on the presentation, like our two Franciscos who are taking care of all the technical issues and making sure that everything is ready. But in particular as well, all speakers, I think that you gave a good impression, I think, on one hand from people implementing projects, but as well more from the institutional part on the difficulties encountered, on the necessity to have funding, problems encountered, but as well some forecast on the future developments and investment needs that you see in the rail sector. I heard as well very well the importance of the CEF funding in the realization of the projects, which of course is very good. And then in particular, I would say as well, we heard from several people the assistance that you're expecting from CINEA, so we really heard that, and as in the past, you can count on us in the future, so that is clear. It will be a cooperative approach like we've done so far. So now I would like to pass the floor first to Monika Heiming. So Monika, if you could tell us a bit what you take back or what you retained from this seminar this morning, and maybe some elements on the realization of the infrastructure managers' activities and what you see for the future. So if you could start, Monika, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know if you can hear me.
We hear you, yes. We don't see you, but we hear you.
I can't start the video though, so that's an issue. So as long as they can hear me, it's fine. So I would like to thank very much CINEA and the CINEA team in particular for this excellent initiative. I think that we all agree that CINEA has a very strategic role in delivering the single European railway area in the field and for the citizens and the economies in the EU. What we also consider is that we see the delivery of the single European railway area a bit on the last mile. You can see this translating into different forms and initiatives actually to accelerate the delivery, the deployment of ERTMS, harmonized technical rules, high maturity projects, and we all understand that very much, but it puts, of course, an additional strain on the industry, on the market, but also on the EU and on executive agencies like CINEA. However, it is a challenge we have to somehow master, because for us 2030 is, let's say, a symbolic first very big milestone to deliver the TEN-T core network corridors. And we need to show also to the wider public, also to the passengers and the industries, what the added value of rail. Because by 2030 we may see also other innovative projects being in the market. And we need also to see that rail continues to have a very important role in a decarbonized environment. So this is very important. So this is why CINEA has for us a very strategic forward-looking role, especially in the management of CEF2. We have well taken note of the the acceleration or the need to accelerate trackside deployment of ERTMS. That is a challenge, but we have also noted that CINEA is proceeding with ERTMS trackside calls only, which is probably a very good thing to do. What we also see is, of course, the concern about the mismatch between the ERTMS rollout plans and the decommissioning of existing rolling stock. This is an equation which we need to solve quickly in order to not have a vicious circle. And as the Commission said earlier, we need to break this circle, and we are fully with you, because we have several members indeed who would like to decommission the Class B system, but the operators are still hanging on to the rolling stock. And so this is where everybody is waiting for each other, and in the end, nothing is being achieved. So there's something we will still need to do. What we also would like to address, of course, is the importance of the reform of the TEN-T, which may then be fed into the in the upcoming or next calls of CINEA, which we need to take care of. And we are also, of course, keen to see how TEN-T and rail freight corridors will evolve over time. What is very important, and that was one of the earliest questions which I heard, was, is there a CEF 3? I think there will be something like a CEF plus, 2 plus, but we do not know at this stage how it will look like, given the fact that we have a milestone by 2030. So what my plea as a representative of rail infrastructure managers, please use CINEA's calls and wisely exchange with CINEA, because it's a main actor for us to bring the European railway system to life, and to help also Carlo and to actually do their job properly. So we need to develop and innovate the system, and we need, of course, to come over time to harmonized technical rules. And so CINEA is one major enabler to achieve this on the ground. And with that, given that the time is progressing, I would like to close here. And again, thank you very much to the entire CINEA team. Highly appreciated initiative, and thanks for inviting me.
Thanks a lot, Monika, for your conclusions. I heard you clearly, or we heard you clearly well on your view on the delivery of the single European railway area, what still needs to be done, the challenges ahead of us. And I heard you clearly saying as well the role of the industry, and you mentioned several times CINEA, so it's clear that a lot is counted on us, but okay, we will do our utmost to respond to the needs and to the requirements. So this on this I would like to thank you, and then I would like now to pass the floor to Henrik Hololei for the final words on what he thinks about the railway sector and the future, and to close this session. So Henrik, please.
Thank you very much, Dirk, and good afternoon to all of you, and also thank you for being with us for this duration of this whole seminar, which I understand has been also very educative and has been bringing together a lot of good speakers, but also a lot of very good listeners. So it is also for me then a great pleasure to close this CINEA seminar on the CEF support to railways, and I was very happy that my good colleague Herald was the one who kicked it off and also came to me and briefed me before I joined here. So I have also a good idea what was discussed today. And no doubt this seminar has been timely and pertinent follow-up to the very successful Connecting Europe Express 36-day journey across the EU. And once again, of course, I use the opportunity to, and I know many people are here as well, and here in CINEA as well. I'd like to thank each and everyone who was involved in making this a true European success, because what can be better than to connect people and to bring Europe to so many different locations across the continent. And this 36 days journey was also very rich in substance, not only very rich in terms of the memorable experiences, which I'm sure many people took with them, but also in terms of the discussions which took place in different locations, a series of conferences that we organized, and starting from Lisbon on the 2nd of September, ending in Paris on the 6th of October. This was really something that has never been done in the history of Europe, and it's great that many of you have also been part of making that history and making this a great success. So really, once again, my and big thanks to everyone. And of course, that gave us an ample opportunity to talk about the where we are heading when it comes to the upgrade and update of the trans-European transport networks and its regulation, and also what more needs to be done in order to create the genuine single European rail area, because we know very well that we are still very far from what we want to see as a really well-functioning rail network delivering connectivity across Europe. Today, delivering connectivity, even cross-border for rail, is a challenge. I mean, we needed to stop in the borders in order to change the engines, locomotives. Come on, this is not serious. And that's why this train was very helpful, because it showed so many deficiencies that we have, and we might not notice, or at least some of the decision makers might not notice, at least now experience it in person. But there is a lot of follow-up to do. There is a lot of very interesting observations, comments. We need to synthesize them, and we also need to use them in order to promote rail as a sustainable transport mode, which is also at the same time modern, innovative, and able to connect Europeans. Coming back to the event today, Dirk has already mentioned in his presentation when talking about the CEF1, that during 2014 and 2020, about 16.6 billion euros were invested in 450 railway projects across Europe. And this accounted for about 70% of total CEF investment in this period. So you see, we have really a very, very strong greening component in our key financial facility to promote the infrastructure. And of course, that means that our policy orientation to prioritize sustainable modes of transport is also very well backed up by the financial means and the way the projects are generated. A great majority of these investments focused on cross-border projects, which support removing bottlenecks or bridging missing links in various sections of the TEN-T network. I think we all agree that usually it has been the cross-border sections where the biggest challenges lie. Member states don't usually prioritize them so much because you can't cut the ribbon there and get the votes of the citizens. They tend to do it rather within their territory, and the other country, adjacent country, wants to do it in their own territory. So it has to be the Europe which brings that together. It's fine. It is a good role for Europe. And if that's the way how we connect, then we are really continuing to do so, because there we are enabling the network really to become a network and not a patchwork. So no doubt that in the future also the cross-border sections, which are the biggest bottlenecks in most cases, will continue to be financed through the CEF. But also digitalization. Also in the past in CEF1 we saw investments to the ERTMS and also other digitalization actions, and of course this is the innovation part and the modernization part, which is indispensable and which is also very intertwined with the infrastructure part. These railway projects also that we had aim notably at building new or upgrading existing railway lines or tunnels, adapting lines to the European gauge, deploying trackside and onboard ERTMS, electrifying lines and adapting freight lines to meet the TEN-T requirements concerning the axle load, speed and train length. Just to mention a bit of what has been financed, and we heard in detail today about the successful progress of some of these projects, which have also made a difference on the ground. I'm sure you're all well aware also with our strategy for the sustainable and smart mobility, our roadmap, our framework, the testimony of Commissioner Vălean, and something that we take it as a basis for the next decade. And of course, that has also ambitious milestones for rail, and that's why also we need the financing to continue. By 2030, the high-speed rail traffic should double across Europe. This is a very, very serious ambition. And of course, by 2050, the rail freight traffic should double, and a multimodal TEN-T with high-speed connectivity should be operational. And notably, and nearly all road vehicles, including new heavy-duty vehicles, should be zero emission. So 2050, we probably will be in a very different world and a very different transport system. But we are not going to get there simply overnight, and the next decades have to pave the way so that we can successfully be able to complete that transition, and why not earlier? It's also clear that increasing passengers and freight carried by railways will remain an important element of our transport policy. But finally, it is the market which is deciding. What we need to do, we need to put the right incentives in place. We need to support the infrastructure development, but we would also need to leave the market the final decisions because they are the best placed. And no state is operating there. No state is, even with state-owned companies, it's not the state who is operating. And in that sense, I believe that we have to have the smart regulation, which also incentivizes many of the new entrants, especially in the rail sector, where this has been one of the biggest problems, I would say, because there is not enough competition, and there has been also constantly the desire to push aside the competition. Never been easy for new entrants to enter the market. It's not like in some other transport modes. Imagine road transport that, a new road haulage company is not able to come to the market because it's pushed out by the incumbent. So that's not the case there, but it is the case in rail and has been the case in rail. But nevertheless, we have to have the right incentives, because only then we will be able to deliver a genuine single European rail area. The Commission will also continue to provide a substantial amount of the funds available under CEF2 to the rail sector, so for infrastructure, innovation, and smart solutions that need to be deployed. And the success stories which have been shared also by our panelists today surely have inspired, hopefully, continuously many of you. And the success of the Öresund link and of the high-speed rail network connecting Paris, Brussels, Köln, Amsterdam, London showed to the member states and stakeholders of many other cross-border projects with an extraordinary social and economic benefit they could bring, and how successfully they can also compete against other transport modes when the incentives have been right, and when the market is also functioning properly. Rail can compete, and rail has got all the ingredients, and we have also successfully helped through the investments in the infrastructure to make this happen. And also, the projects which are currently ongoing and will make a difference on the ground, like Rail Baltica, which I happen to know very well, but also Lyon-Torino, the Y-Bus, the Fehmarnbelt, the Brenner-based tunnel, Dresden-Prague, Vienna-Bratislava, Budapest, and several other projects which are also connecting the Southeast Europe. They all play an important role, and they will shape also the future of European transportation. And the same is true also for some other projects addressed here today, primarily national, but with significant European added value. The Malpensa railway connection, Stuttgart-Ulm, and the Greek railway investments in the Orient-East Med corridor. Building or upgrading rail infrastructure, as we all know, takes time. Thus, the importance of managing the existing infrastructure and the capacity better than we do today. And that is where the digitalization comes in and needs to support the better management of the existing capacity. Therefore, deploying the ERTMS, the European Rail Traffic Management System, should have a significant impact in the capacity management as well as safety, reliability, and punctuality. And we heard today from our ERTMS experts their suggestions on how to accelerate deployment at European level. This is really a must. I don't think we are where we want to be with the ERTMS deployment. I am convinced and also reassured that there is a strong push from the industry side. This is important. We also have made financing available. We would have liked to see that the member states are using more money in order to deploy ERTMS through their RRF funds. But those member states who do are very much welcome, and it's clear that they would also make the steps to get closer to the modern innovative railway system. But this needs to be also across Europe, because that is absolutely essential. And in addition to the technical specification for interoperability, we are following rail research and innovation also with great interest, including, of course, future technologies. And as addressed this morning, the Commission, together with our friends in ERA, and of course the Europe's Rail, formerly known as the Shift to Rail. Okay, it's still Shift to Rail, but Europe's Rail, I think, is already in our minds, and it is just a matter of a few months when it will be formally launched. And they are doing a great job in looking how to support the future, further development of innovative technologies, from the magnetically levitated pods in vacuum tubes to Hyperloop. So I think we need to be open to all these new technologies, and we need to support them. As we know, with the innovation, some of it ends in the market, some never, but anything that you do would anyway spill over to those solutions which will find a way in the market. And I think that it is good that we also keep the options open, because it is an area which is in the constant change as well. And the Commission will also make sure that the CEF2 program will continue the efficient railway investments. And look, we managed to maintain an identical budget for CEF2 as we had in CEF1, with an additional 1.7 billion for 10T infrastructure projects with a dual civilian military use, including in the railway sector. So let's make good use of that. And altogether, the transport budget in CEF2 is 26 billion. So I know the needs in the sector are tenfold or even more, but I think we should be able to use that money also in order to generate additional investments. And it's definitely been a very helpful tool in order to help to facilitate the change. Building on the lessons learned of the CEF1 blending facility, we have also set up the alternative fuels infrastructure facility within the CEF to foster our smart and sustainable mobility strategy. This will be of marginal interest for railways in respect of the rollout of hydrogen refueling infrastructure. And we are all aware that in the last couple of years, many CEF rail projects also have suffered delays, and some new investments were postponed due to the COVID pandemic and are only now gradually bouncing back. So we also need to keep a close eye upon that, need to make sure that even when there have been the delays, that we are there to support that the projects get back on track and will start to deliver. I mean, clearly the COVID pandemic has had an impact everywhere, and it is also creating, I think, a lot of challenges in many parts, because when things were slowing down, now they are actually gearing up and heating up, and that means also heating up the market, and especially the construction market, where we can see that there is a rise of prices, which also means that when the prices go up and there are shortages of potential shortages of labor, then it also means that the projects that were planned according to one cost-benefit analysis might become considerably more expensive, and in the end you can do less than you were able to do in the past, or at least what was the planning. So I think that it is very important to keep that in mind as well, especially now, and it's also difficult to predict exactly how this is going to develop in the next years to come. But I think that we should rather be very cautious and be also budgeting and earmarking probably higher costs than we originally have budgeted. Our 3-year, which is 21-23, planning of calls for proposals provide also a significant front-loading of over 18 billion euros, which will notably contribute to the post-pandemic recovery. It is also paired, with the money which comes from the RRF. Also, the new regional funds have opened up. There is also a certain degree of front-loading. So there is also quite a lot of European financed money or European finances in the market for the infrastructure development, and never been so much money in the market at this stage. And of course, that also gives you the understanding also what I said earlier about certainly certain shortages that we can see and certain heating up of the construction market. And the first calls for proposals, which were launched 16th of September, big thanks to Dirk and his team who did impeccable work in order to make sure that everything was ready for the calls in record time. And we are very proud that this went as smoothly as it always does when CINEA is in charge. They account for a CEF investment of 6 billion or over 7 billion if we count the rolling call of the alternative fuels infrastructure facility to be deployed over the next 3 years period. So what can I say? Make sure that you have good projects, that you take them out of the good pipeline, and you also make sure that you submit them. And let's hope that many of them also then get the financing and get to be implemented in practice. New calls will also be launched, of course, 22 and 23 around September, October for virtually all funding priorities again. And dear ladies and gentlemen, we are still in the middle of the European Year of Rail, which has, I think, also helped to foster more attention towards the sector. The Connecting Europe Express has done its part also to promote the European rail solutions. And I think that these initiatives have also given a fresh impetus to place railways at the heart of our sustainable, smart and resilient mobility system of the future. But now it's up to us to make change happen. Lastly, let me thank and praise CINEA, Dirk, and all the participants for this timely, interesting, and most useful seminar. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Stay well, and all the best.
Thank you, Henrik. And you made a huge number of, I think, very good remarks and things that we should look at. So I will not even try to repeat all of them, but I think what people should retain from what you said, everything, of course, but I would say the fact that there's still a lot to be done to really make rail a modern means to connect people in Europe. So there's a lot that we need to be done. Cross-border projects remain important. The digitalization is super important, as you mentioned. The deployer TMS should get a big kick to get it more done. But at the same time, you said as well, there are quite some ambitious milestones for rail for the years to come up to 2050. And as well, you mentioned that there will be a huge part, as we all know, of the budget of CEF2 going to rail. So I think there's a huge lot of work for all of us. I would say people there, beneficiaries and CINEA, to really make it happen. But as we did in the past, and thanks for your nice words at the end to CINEA, we are from our side definitely keen on making it happen together with you and together with all of you there. So I hope from your side as well that you all enjoyed the seminar, which I did for sure. I think it was very useful to get this feedback. So I hope you enjoyed it, as I said, and I'm sure that you all deserve now your lunch break. Enjoy this and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
¿Néstor? ¿Eres Néstor? ¿Néstor Rivas Torres?
¿Doña Joana?
Sin doña, solo Joana, está bien. Estás igual.
Bueno, un poco más mayor, ¿no?
Pero con la misma cara de pillo.
¿Usted también está igual? ¿O mejor?
No hace falta que mientas. Y tutéame, que ya no soy tu profe. ¿Qué tal tu inglés? You haven't given up, right?
No, qué va. Además, ahora con las series y las pelis en versión original.
In English, please.
I think that I speak English quite well.
¿Qué haces aquí? ¿Dónde vas?
Voy a París a hacer un máster. ¿Y usted? Perdón. ¿Y tú?
Voy a Bordeaux. Es que he ligado, ¿sabes?
Really?
Long story, pero sí. Voy a conocer a un señor en Bordeaux. Me descargué una app de estas que usáis vosotros para ligar. Sin ninguna intención, la verdad. Pero un día descubrí que podía cambiar mi ubicación e inventarme que vivo en otro lugar. Y entonces me convertí en una señora jubilada de Bordeaux, sin tener en cuenta que me enamoraría de otro señor jubilado de Bordeaux y que querría viajar para conocerle.
Pues suena guay, ¿no?
Suena a locura. Pero ahora más que nunca me apetece hacer locuras.
Irá bien. Seguro.
¿Y tú qué? ¿Alguna chica? Quizás un chico.
No descarto ninguna de las dos opciones. Pero de momento nada. Que los vínculos son complicados.
A mí me lo vas a decir. Ese máster que vas a hacer en París, ¿de qué va?
¿Trenes?
Trenes. Claro. Te encantaban. ¿Dónde nos íbamos a encontrar si no? Yo es que no viajo si no es en tren. Ya está bien de tanto contaminar. Aunque tarde un poquito más en llegar a mi love story.
No puedo estar más de acuerdo. De hecho, yo estudié ingeniería industrial y ahora me estoy especializando en sistemas ferroviarios.
Wow. I'm impressed. Well done. Responsable, comprometido con el medio ambiente, como debe ser.
En realidad fuiste tú.
¿Y yo qué?
¿Lo recuerdas? Me lo diste tú después de una clase. Me dijiste que mi futuro era trabajando con trenes.
Aún lo tienes.
Va conmigo siempre.
Estaba claro que te dedicarías a ello.
Gracias.
¿Ay?
Por hacerme creer que era posible. For shining my way.
For lighting my way. Así mejor.
Ok, teacher.
The future waits.
Buen viaje, Joana.